Okay. What it do, sober soldiers, salute. This is Stick from Dead Prayers with my partner, M1. And you are in tune to gotkushTV.
There was empires in Africa called Kush, Timbuktu, where every race came to get booked. My success to you, even if you wish me the opposite. Sooner or later, we'll all see who the prophet is.
Achomi na jele Gbontwi Nimbiane Nyenko gotkushTV Nyeyiradon. My name is Na Jele Gbontwi, and right now you're watching gotkushTV. Thank you.
I can't think about this democracy. 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 Crazy demo. Demonstration of crazy demonstration. Keep not being crazy. Why for Africa? As time we go, things just stay bad more and more. Democracy, crazy demo, demonstration of crazy demonstration, democracy, crazy demo, democracy, crazy demo. I can't think about this democracy. 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 Democracy, crazy demo, demonstration of crazy demonstration. Defeat of the crazy. Why for Africa? As time we go, things just stay bad more and more. Democracy, crazy demo, demonstration of crazy demonstration, democracy, crazy demo, democracy. Tenda Mwali, be thankful unto the Mother, Father, creative life force of the universe. Kudzai Mudzimu Mukulu, we give you praises unto our great ancestors. Abibi Tumi, Abibi Fahodi, African power and African liberation for all African people. My name is Shakara, and you are live with us this Ojibade Tuesday, the 26th of the month they call March 2024, and we are live and in session for another episode of Ghana Democracy Under Fire. Yes, indeed, kings and queens. It's episode 2. It's episode 2. And we are going to be exploring the dynamics of Ghana as the model neo-colony. It's going to be a very interesting show, brothers and sisters. We're going to be getting into some different dynamics here. You know what I'm saying? Very interactive as well. So do stay tuned. Yeah. And without further ado, let me bring forward to you the man of the hour, our analyst, our organizer, our activist, our writer extraordinaire, the one and only Gbontwi Anyetei. Greetings, Gbontwi Anyetei.
Good evening. Greetings.
All right, good to see you, my brother. You know what I'm saying? Good to see you. And yeah, we're gonna get into this show today, bro. I feel like it's an interesting one. Give our viewers an insight into what kinds of things are we gonna be exploring today.
Yeah, it occurred to me that our conversations so far have been, and rightly so, about the sort of the underlying ideology or lack thereof, depending on how you consider the word ideology, of the political class in Ghana. So it's all kind of like big picture stuff. What I
Right.
wanted to do was look at some case studies and like really speak to kind of like the timeline that how they occurred and so forth, for people to sort of understand what it is like for us residing in Ghana. And more than that as well, to also show some of the connections between the two parties. With this being an election year, even the Pan-Africanists that you're going to speak to in life will be starting to try and draw some sort of distinction between the parties. Some recency bias will kick in, and this government is definitely worse because they're the ones who are in, that kind of thing. But it's really important that we don't lose focus. There's the lived reality, and there's definitely going to be some nuances, which can't be denied. But when it comes to literally how bonded the political class are of either of the two parties, or the duopoly, as a lot of Ghanaians are calling it, a duopoly, they really would do the same thing, and very often have done the same thing when they've been in power. And then most importantly for this conversation too, they have colluded in a lot of the things that we're going to be talking about. So yeah, before we get into it too, I want to make it clear, one thing clear: Nixon impeachment speech setting, that, you know, it's going to look like, you know, I'm laughing at these things, but it's really, really gallows humor. You either laugh or you cry.
Yes.
Relatively, even you die.
Yes.
So it's about a coping mechanism, and also there's no surrender here to Africanists as part of two organizations: Economic Fighters League, All African People's Revolutionary Party. I definitely haven't given up. This conversation for me, and all the conversations we have, both on the podcast and then where I'm very honored to be a guest on some of the other conversations, it's very, very much about articulating these things, putting them out there as sort of historical record, and also then setting myself up along with the organization I'm part of to then take it to the next level. Part of what we're going to be seeing is kind of like a lack of like investigative journalism, and any one of the case studies we're going to be looking at could be a book / a series of documentaries. One on their own could be those things. So this conversation is very much about kind of like putting it out there, getting into a little bit, not too much, because we're trying to get through quite a few. And then ancestors guiding, we can return to a good number of these subjects with this podcast, and certainly other projects that I've got lined up where investigative journalism piece comes into it. The search is on to find out the truth about a lot of the sort of rumor and hype that makes a typical story, political story, especially in Ghana.
Thank you very much for that breakdown, brother Gbontwi. Yes, indeed, family. So do stay tuned. And if you would like to ask a question later on in the show, or even now, to be honest with you, feel free to do so. But please at gotkushTV in your chat, at gotkushTV, and we'll make sure that we get to your question, preferably within the second hour of the podcast. All right, brothers and sisters. So we're gonna get into some dynamics. I'm gonna start sharing my screen, because we've got some aids, some visual aids for you today, brothers and sisters, and we're gonna introduce you to our primary visual aid for the evening's proceedings. All right, let us introduce you to the primary visual aid for this evening's proceedings. And so we're going to be engaging in some assignments, right, and in some stratification of the case studies that we're going to be exploring today. Please explain our visual tool, our visual aid here, Gbontwi.
Yeah, I thought this would be interesting. I've seen this device used across a few platforms and genres. I think it's a really nice way of breaking down the conversation. As organizers, as Africans, too often everything is CIA or self-hate and other kind of things like this. And it could be argued that it is one of those given things all the time. Maybe to some degree, less or more at other times, but I thought it was important to show that we're looking at this to some degree as much as possible scientifically, and we're looking at the kind of like the mindset of the people that we're dealing with, and our own mindset as the people who are being done to, and to some degree, yeah, we are allowing it. These people are not smarter than us. This conversation is going to show that. These people are not stronger than us individually. I think it was Malcolm X that said, we are not outnumbered, we are out-organized. And it's really shameful to say that these people, as much as we consider them not as smart as us, or not smarter than us, not stronger than us, they are managing to be more organized than us. And that's all it's taking for this political class, just hundreds of men and women at any given time. And then you could argue some half-hearted police and maybe some more dedicated soldiers having their back, taking on and suppressing successfully a whole population of millions. But yes, this is what I'm using. I'm really hoping that people will disagree. This is by no means, set in iron. It's kind of like my take, and kind of my take based on, I guess, kind of like my perspective as well. So I know for a lot of people, they might want to put all of this under black skin, white mask, straight out of Frantz Fanon. But for me, it's kind of like, yeah, that's how I like the word you use, stratification. It's the way I have it. Stratify.
All right. So, bro, before we actually get into the, assigning, the different case studies here, it might be useful to explain the different labels that we've got here, right? So, from top to bottom, we've got black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, and then finally distraction. So we're going to be basically assigning the different case studies, in that we look at into one of these categories as we go through our case studies. So just give our viewers a brief explanation of these 5 categories and what is the meaning behind them, so that they understand why the different case studies are going to be put into these different subsections.
Okay, so my thinking behind the 5 subsections. First of all, black skin, white masks. I would like to think that all our listeners here today will be aware of that, because we could call it term. It's the title of a Frantz Fanon book in which he speaks to, yes, the deep level of self-loathing that exists within, I should say, much of the political class is where he sort of focuses his attention in that book. So, to put it simply, black people representing white interests. To put it that way, it simply does it a bit of a disservice, because it looks as just sort of economic, political interests. But actually, for me, it goes deeper. It's spiritual, because you're suppressing your own people, and very often it backfires on them. I don't think we're getting into any of those stories today, but we have, cases where ministers are dying unavoidable deaths. We just had the deputy finance minister 2 weeks ago. He died. He was being transported from Kumasi to, well, I should say, from, I think it was the eastern region, or maybe the Ashanti region, to Accra, to then be flown to Europe. And he died mid-travel. This would have been eminently avoidable if some of the things we're going to be discussing around corruption, for instance, hadn't been just so abject, and they had built decent hospitals. And we have cases like that. So it's really going back on this political class in lots of ways very often. So that's where I'm coming from with the black skin, white mask. Treasonable treason, I've always liked that word. Because as an African, I've never been able to really relate to the word the way I should be. Like, I would love to be able to live in a society where patriotism is taken so seriously. First of all, I was raised in Britain, which means, which is a country to which I had, it's a region to which I had no loyalty, first of all, so treason doesn't count there at all. And then on the continent, or specifically Ghana, yeah, patriotism isn't a notion that is taken so seriously. That treason is the word that it should be, because unfortunately, treason and treasonable offences are, you know, the everyday activities. You know, things that go against the crown, things that go against the sovereignty of your nation, betrayal of your nation to foreign power, all these things that comes under treason takes place in one way or another. You know, every day, whether it's what we import, whether it's from where we put our economics and so forth. So yeah, treasonable offence is there, and corruption really needs no further elaboration, but I will. Corruption on its own, let me shout out former fighter general of Economic Fighters League, Hardy Yakubu. He used to say that corruption is a word we should strive to stop using, because it's become very neutralized. When people hear corruption, it's like, oh, corruption. It's like, it's stealing. We should see it as it's stealing. One of the powerful things about using the term stealing is that it's still considered a big deal. What is so-called mob justice, jungle justice, sometimes it's called. In Ghana, it's still taken very seriously, to the degree where you still get memes and caricatures pointing out what people do on the street. Somebody who gets caught stealing, whether it's a phone or a woman's purse, is just so tragically different to what they do to the political thieves, who are not only stealing from them in the immediate sense, but they're stealing from our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. Yet we hail them up, we move to the side when their cars are passing with big alarms on it and all of this kind of thing. So yeah, that return to the word stealing, I understand, but at the same time to corruption, as far as when it comes to political theft, it's a catch-all. Yeah, I definitely understand the need to assign stealing to it, and really corruption at its finest. So we'll be looking into some of those. And then just plain lazy is another one. I know this one is actually going to be, fun enough, in its own way, the most debated, because to say lazy would be to suggest that it hasn't been thought through. There's no plan. And of course, many critics, and rightly so, will point out, no, actually, there is a plan. I might not know what the plan is. We might not know what the plan is. It might take some years for it to all come clear, but there always is a plan. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what we slot in there and the responses we get. And then we've got distraction. Distraction is a powerful one. And yeah, another one that I'm looking forward to what our listeners, our viewers, takes are on what I consider distraction. Once again, I'm putting that disclaimer there that yes, I'm proceeding that what I might call a distraction is going to be very real and live and present, clear and present danger, I should say, to certain people. But yeah, as far as the vast majority of the population and what we should be focusing on, a couple of these are truly just distractions to stop us focusing on things that impact more of us, impact our future.
All right, brother Buntwi. You know what I'm saying? We're going to get into this now. Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting episode, brothers and sisters. So I hope you're here, ready and rearing to go. Yeah, we're going to be stratifying some case studies, yes, and stories that are relevant to politics in Ghana. particularly in recent years, into these 5 categories: black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, and distraction. Okay, so let's get into this now. We're going to get into our first case study, and we're going to come back to these images that you now, but let's get into the first case study. The first case study is the National Cathedral, also known as the National Cathedral of Ghana, which you can see pictured, in this image, brothers and sisters. And it's a magnificent edifice. So, like, what's happening, brother Butchie? Why are we talking about the National Cathedral of Ghana?
Point of correction, my brother. This is not a picture of the edifice. This is a picture of the architect's plan.
Okay. All
exactly.
right. Okay.
Exactly. Let me make it perfectly clear to our listeners that this cathedral has not been built. It is, as we speak, an unfinished foundation and eyesore in the ministries region of Accra, and will not be completed. And as at time of speaking, time of live, time of recording, I'm unclear on what the ultimate fate of that work site is going to be.
Right.
So the story of this cathedral is the first year of Akufo-Addo's presidency. This is when he first suggested the idea of this national cathedral that he wanted to build. And it was, of course, as a sensible population, laughed at as a ludicrous idea.
Sorry, Butchie, just to say this, his first day would have been 2016.
Yeah.
7 years ago, right? So go ahead.
7 years ago, exactly. Actually, well, the election would have been end of 2016, so his first year 2017.
Yes, go ahead. Yeah.
So yeah, that was one of the things that he projected. He wanted to do. He wanted to take place. He said that he had received a request from God in his prayers to build this cathedral.
Right.
And most Ghanaians on that occasion disagreed with whichever spiritual system was engaging with Akufo-Addo at that time, because nobody wanted this cathedral to be built. Nobody wanted it. Of course, it goes without saying that non-religious people like myself, and of course Muslims, and then of course traditional believers didn't want it built. So that writes off, what do you say, 60% of the population, maybe half, depending on how many you believe to be Christian. But even the Christians were against it. And anybody that knows more than a handful of Christians will understand why. Christians don't want to worship together. So who exactly was going to be in that cathedral? The charismatics don't want to worship with the Catholics. The Presbyterians don't want to worship with the Wesleyans. Jehovah's Witnesses definitely don't want to worship with the Mormons. So who would be in this cathedral at any given time? It was an idea that was really shut down and nobody really took seriously, including myself, in the beginning. The word at the time was that it was going to be privately funded. So worst case scenario, people were thinking, even if it was to happen, 100 million is what the price was as stated at the beginning. It wasn't going to be sort of a taxpayer issue, a member of the public issue, even if it was going to be another one of Ghana's many white elephants, to use that expression. But then what ended up happening was they weren't able to raise the funds. They weren't able to raise the funds privately, which
Oh, we've got some freezing going on here, brothers and sisters. Don't worry, we'll get Gbontwi back in the building very shortly, I'm sure. But yes, we're talking about the National Cathedral of Ghana. And for those who may be thinking, oh, that looks like a nice building, I wonder where that is. Brothers and sisters, it's not yet been built. Yeah, and Gbontwi was just explaining to us that the plans for this began in the first year of the presidency of Nana Akufo-Addo, which he was elected in 2016, and his first year would have been in 2017. Okay, and so he proceeded to try and convince the nation of Ghana to get behind this cathedral project, but nobody in the nation really and truly en masse seem to be, down with the program, so to speak. Yeah, Gbontwi says that the traditionalists weren't feeling it, and the Muslims weren't feeling it, and that's somewhere between 50 to 60% of the population, depending on what statistics you take on. Yeah, but then he said even the majority of the Christians, weren't really down with the program of the building of this national cathedral. It's very, very interesting. And so Nana Akufo-Addo said that he was going to raise the money through private finance, private funding, so as not to be taking from the coffers, yes, of the Ghanaian people through their taxes or anything that, should be benefiting the people as far as the budget of the state. But as yet, he has been unable, 7 to 8 years later, to raise the necessary finances for this particular project. Another interesting point that Gbontwi raised was that even the Christians who were against it were asking, why? Because who's going to worship here? Is it going to be a cathedral for the Catholics or the Protestants? Is it going to be a cathedral for the Pentecostal? Yeah, or the Mormons? Is it going to be a cathedral for the Baptists or the Methodists? And none of these people seem to want to worship together. Yeah, I wonder what the Afrikan mission had to say about this. Like they could do in a new building. So I wonder what they had to say about this. All right, Gbontwi, you're back in us. Feel free to continue.
Yeah, sorry. So $100 million, they can't get it funded. Now they're trying to make it a public situation, publicly funded. And there was some serious fight back. The politicians, Akufo-Addo in particular, were extremely stubborn that this cathedral must happen. They had a whole launching and ground opening thing for the foundation. They flew in a stone from Israel, of all places, to have it consecrated as the cornerstone of the cathedral and all of this. Before long,
did you say they imported stone from Israel?
Yes.
Okay.
You heard right. They imported one particular special stone from Israel to use at the cornerstone of the cathedral.
Okay. Interesting.
Which is, like I said, all of these things are conversations on their own. So long story short, 100 million prediction became 400 million. The foundation, which is a mess, we should try to get a picture of the foundation as it is now. 7 years later, or I should say 6 years probably after the actual groundbreaking and all of that. They said that some money had already been spent on it. Most of that money allegedly going to David Ajayi's company. I've never heard of an architect being paid that amount of money in full upfront before real construction had started, but that's what the word was. And fast forward to now, this 400 million project is not going to happen. The amounts that they say have gone into it vary. Critics blow up the amounts. Those who are pro-government reduce the amount, but it's there. Serious buildings were destroyed to make way for its construction. So a waste of money, a waste of time, all energy and money that could have gone to better causes. The hospitals we're talking about, schools, of course, and so forth. So this National Cathedral is, for me, the embodiment of the last 8 years. Like, I think this will be one of the images if not the image of that people take away with them from 8 years of this particular dispensation.
Interesting. Now, Gbontwi, like this edifice in the making, or maybe not in the making, right? Depending, yeah. And this project seems very similar to a project that preceded it in the neighboring nation of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast. Yeah. I'll explain the dynamics. Let me explain it now. Basically, brothers and sisters, yeah, there is a big cathedral in the nation of Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, called Basilica of Our Lady of Peace. Yeah. And it's a big cathedral. Not only is it a big cathedral, but it is currently the Guinness Book World Record holder for the biggest church in the world, brothers and sisters. Yes, indeed, in Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire, neighboring Ghana. And it was built under the premiership of former president of Ivory Coast, Felix Houphouët-Boigny. Yes. And who is said to have done wonders and worked the miracle of creating a quote unquote stable economy in Cote d'Ivoire. Well, either later disavowing that claim by saying that there was growth, economic growth without development, but still managed to build a big, massive cathedral, the biggest in the world, while the nation was basically, being underdeveloped. Yeah, what I'm saying, as far as actual material benefits to the people. Are you aware of the extent to which, in any extent to which, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo was inspired by His Excellency Felix Houphouët-Boigny, his predecessor?
It would make sense. It would make sense. They both carry the same political legacy, and they are both perfect puppets for European interests. So, like his ideological father, it would make sense that he would want to follow his footsteps and build a pointless cathedral which doesn't help, as you said, the population in any way.
Okay, all right. And do you have a figure in terms of how much this was supposed to cost? Either initially,
it was supposed to be 100 million when it first started. Right. And this is $100 million, US dollars.
Yes.
The Ghanaian narrative of the dollar is a fascinating one, a podcast in itself. Akufo-Addo himself occasionally will say that it's very important to stop benchmarking using the US dollar, and then within days of him saying this, he or someone else in his government will use US dollar as a benchmark. Why? Okay. Because of focusing on things like the cathedral, the Ghana city, our currency is always stumbling over itself. And it's really hard to use that as a marker for any kind of project, because the value keeps changing. So with this $100 million US dollars, that was the original projected price, eventually becoming 400 million. It was very, very odd because it's the US dollar. And we know the US dollar did have experienced some issues. I think about three years ago, in around COVID and so forth as well, which we'll be talking about. Nothing that would justify a quadrupling of the 100 million. So that's just political classing.
Okay. Or maybe Nana Akufo-Addo decided that he wanted to import all of the stones, not just one, from Israel. All right, Gbontwi. So we've got that one. Are we going to put it in place now? Where are we going to place this on?
I'm putting that definitely.
He seems to have frozen at the crucial moment where we were going to get the stratification, brothers and sisters. So for those who are not aware, yeah, this episode, we are in the business of stratification. We're going to be looking at case studies, yeah, and we're going to be putting those case studies into a stratification. So are we placing this Gbontwi under black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, or just plain lazy, or distraction? Which are these?
For me, it's got to be corruption.
Corruption. Okay. All right.
A case, I'm sure, for making it black skin, white masks. Why in an African nation should there be a cathedral after history has borne out so much the role of religion in pacifying our population? So much that has happened. But for me, definitely it's corruption at its finest.
Corruption at its finest. Okay, so we've stratified our first case study, brothers and sisters. We have just been talking about the National Cathedral of Ghana, and in the spirit of our stratification, whether it's black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, a distraction, Gbontwi Anyetei has classed this particular edifice that is still not finished 8 years later after it was announced as corruption at its finest. Woo!
Point of correction on that, it has not even started. For some
started.
My construction people tell me that foundation laying does not count as starting. It has got to get above it counts as starting. So foundation, it has not started.
So buildings were knocked down, land was cleared, people were paid for this thing, but only the foundation was built, and in construction, this is not actually starting. This is very interesting. You learn something new every day, brothers and sisters. Okay, that's case study number 1, the Ghana National Cathedral. Let's get into case study number 2. Achimota rezoning. This is an interesting one, yeah. One that's going to be of interest to those who have interest in environmental concerns. Why is Achimota rezoning on the list, Gbontwi?
Achimota rezoning, like I said, this list of case studies, stories, is by no means exhaustive. I really wanted to get a nice sort of cross section of these kind of things, and one of the reasons why I chose this one is I know that
all right. By the way, brothers and sisters, yeah, as Gbontwi Anyetei is assigning his stratification, yeah, you can feel free to let us know if you agree with him or not, yeah, and we've got a few people doing that already. Kushti is saying no, it's a treasonable offense. So yeah, you know what I'm saying, Kushti saying treason, straight treason I go around here, you know it. Yeah, so if you agree or disagree, feel free to put agree or disagree in the chat. And if you disagree with Gbontwi Anyetei, let us know where you would stratify this particular case study, given the explanation that he has provided us for the conversation, brothers and sisters. You are in tune to Ghana, democracy under fire. We are discussing Ghana as the model neo-colony through the eyes of specific case studies that brother Gbontwi Anyetei is bringing to our attention to give us an understanding of how, you know, life, yeah, and politics and policies and issues are addressed in the nation of Ghana, a great nation, a beautiful nation, but a nation like the rest of our African nations on the continent and in the Caribbean that is currently under the boot of neocolonialism, and that gives rise to certain strange, weird, and wonderful, and often sometimes entertaining dynamics. I know Gbontwi gave his disclaimer at the beginning of the show to say that if he's laughing, it's not to be flippant, yes, and or negate the seriousness of the issue. But as we say in Jamaica, sometime you have to take bad thing, make laugh. Me say sometime you have to take bad thing, make laugh, because if you not laugh, Yagabal. And so we just dealt with the issue, the case study of the National Cathedral of Ghana. It's a very, very interesting case study. You know what I'm saying? Now, with the benefit of having been to Ghana, one thing I do know, in fact, I should actually bring this this question to Gbontwi, is that there's a very big mosque, in Ghana, in Accra. And so it could be that our His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo is attempting some Christian nationalism and engaging in some free market competition with the giant mosque that we currently have in Accra, which was, I'm dutifully informed, assisted in building by the Turkish. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So maybe he's trying to match the grandeur of that mosque. You know what I'm saying? All right. Gbontwi was back with us. I think he's frozen again. Don't worry, brothers and sisters, we're gonna get him back. Yeah, and get onto this next case study, which is Achimota. Yeah, rezoning. Some of you may be aware of that name. Achimota is the name. One of the major educational institutions of Ghana bears the name Achimota, and is a school that Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah attended, Aikweama, the writer, attended, as well as many other, great brothers and sisters from Ghana. Gbontwi, you are back with us. So why are we discussing Achimota?
Yeah, I'm sorry about my tech problems. I think if it goes off again, I will switch to my phone.
No problem.
Okay, so we're talking about that first one because I think we can all relate to this. I chose the rezoning story. I think in some ways we can all relate to all the stories we're going to use today. But the rezoning thing is particularly apt because we can all relate to it one way or another. Whether it's to do with voting, duking of stats, whatever it is, there has been rezoning that has taken place around you. So with the rezoning, first of all, let's tell the story of what Achimota Forest is. Achimota Forest is sacred land. It's a forest, and we know that for a lot of African peoples, including the people of Accra, the amount of ecological support, the amount of sustenance that forests have given us over the years is limitless. So Achimota is sacred for that reason. The name actually, let's break down the name of Achimota Forest. Achimota is actually made up of 4 words. Achimota, which means you don't mention their name, or you don't mention the name of the person there. The story of that name was that enslaved Africans would escape to Achimota Forest to seek solace from slavers. And when they would come around asking for their captives, the people of Accra who lived in the vicinity of the place would say nothing. That's where that name came from. You don't say no names, basically, to use that kind of like rap expression. And so this is just part of the story of Achimota. So it's preserved. And then let's talk about ecologically. We know, well, I'd like to think that we know what trees do. They are key to the flow of turning carbon monoxide into oxygen that we all breathe, rich or poor, tall or short, light-skinned or dark-skinned, we all need oxygen to breathe. Trees are key to that. On top of that, specifically to Accra is prone to flooding every single rainy season. Accra floods, which is a conversation once again of its own. How does rain that comes, because rain always comes, and infrastructure that we're supposed to be familiar with because we've got municipal organizations that have these things covered. How does every year flooding take place? A big part of this is because people are cutting down trees for all sorts of reasons. And without the trees and the roots of the trees basically sucking the water into the ground, that water that sits on the ground and just floats along looking for mischief. And the mischief that it often causes is flooding, gutters that have been clogged up with various plastics. And so floods that don't really reach a serious level, I mean, these are not reaching tsunami levels, are killing people. Simply because people are not realizing where they're trying to walk is actually a gutter. A car gets carried along. People get trapped inside the car. I actually met somebody at last year's Homo Walk. That's the Accra Gbontwi New Year's Festival. I actually met somebody whose sister-in-law had died last year in the flooding. I'd heard the story on local radio, and it was just really, really sad. She was a doctor, and we don't, any loss of life or something like that is, of course, extremely disheartening. But the fact that she was a doctor too, or the people that she won't be helping anymore, and all of this kind of thing, just made the story even more abject. So anyway, so here we have a situation where we need all the trees we can get. The place is sacred, and we wake up one morning to find out that the parts of the forest, 260 acres to be exact, had been rezoned for very, very foolish condominiums and things like that are popping up all over Accra. That what's the number? I think it's like 90+% of the population cannot afford. And it was tragic. And so, just as was the response to the cathedral, Ghanaians were up in arms, radio stations, social media, and all of that. And kind of like there began some form of investigation to sort of find out what exactly had happened. And yeah, so this 260 acre rezoning for private use, it was alleged to have been falling into certain political figures' hands and family members of politicians, which was sort of predicted. And then in the fallout, we came to find, and this is of course the party that is in right now that's doing it. Let me get the years here. I've got my notes. The story first broke in 2022, and then a short while after the story first broke, we then find out that actually the previous government had actually previously agreed to rezone the land. This is all whilst the opposition, who are the previous government, were up in arms with the rest of us. How can this be happening? Come to find out that they had agreed to the rezoning before, and in fact, they had agreed to rezone 368. So MPP in this news were of the feeling that, well, we were going to rezone less than the previous government had agreed to. So once again, this is an example of what I'm talking about. All of these parties representing the same interests, behaving in the same way, very loosely interpretable left-wing, right-wing stuff, very, very loosely, but yeah, very much representing the same interests and the same traits, responses. And,
For just to clarify for our listeners who may be unaware, the term rezoning basically means cutting down the trees, right? Trying to utilize the land for commercial.
Zoning is literally to say this land is now open to be cut. To say that it is no longer protected.
Right.
You understand? So it happens, in any kind of like gentrification situation. You have land, you have buildings, council estates, or project housing, whatever you call it, that is meant only for public social housing. That means there's a cap on how much rents can be taken for these things. and then with some political collusion, and it always needs political collusion because the committees are never just the sitting government. The committee is always members of both sides.
Right.
So some sort of nod at continuity.
Okay.
And that took place, and in this case, there was that agreement to have it resolved to say that yes, it's no longer protected ecological land. It's no longer to be conserved. It is now open to be used for private use. And yes, you're going to assume with private use, it's going to be cutting it down. Even if people are just going to make, not just, but people are going to make another golf course. The British already cut down much of the forest for a Chumata golf course. That'll be like 100 years ago at this point.
Yes.
And then the school that is there was formerly the Prince of Wales College. It's now a Chumata school. Krumah actually attended that school.
Yes.
But so now this was going to then take place to then make it open to private exploiters and deforesters.
Interesting. I'm sure a lot of brothers and sisters were very, very moved by the history. I was not. I learned something new today in terms of the meaning of the term Achimota. I've never looked into that before, and its history and its connection to the enslavement of African people. And that's interesting because what Gbontwi has explained is actually a form of resistance. And we are often given the impression that our brothers and sisters on the continent did not resist the European enslaver, and are often characterized as collaborators and or initiators of the so-called transatlantic so-called slave trade, right? So that's an interesting story on that front. I'm gonna ask you a question. Let me put a question in the chat, Gbontwi, if I may. But we've got pictured here some protesters, some demonstrators, and the signs read "Save Achimota Forest Now," and also forest conservation is also development. Now, who are the people that are demonstrating? Is it a particular movement or organization or campaign? And what are their demands? Are you aware of their demands, or should we save that for another?
It wasn't just one organization. It was a number of organizations. So I don't know who these two gentlemen, who they represent. I can look into that. It shouldn't be hard to find out. But I very much like the message, the second message. Forest conservation is all development. Development is another word that has become very problematized. Which is painful to me because I do like the word development, but the longer this neo-colonial system continues, the word development is becoming smeared by neo-colonial treatment. So development literally just means shiny buildings, the taller the better. That's it. That's literally all development means now. It has nothing to do with whether the materials are sourced locally. It means nothing to do with whether the architects are from the local school. It has nothing to do with whether the art inside the buildings are made, in any kind of,
sustainable.
Nothing. It's just a tall building that looks shiny, ideally white or some other kind of improbable colors, and that is development. Look how many tall buildings there are. So more and more people are starting to really side-eye the word development. And his message, forest conservation, is also development. If we are going to really revisit the word development and say, listen, we need to see development along what benefits the people of the nation, of the region, of the town, of the village, definitely forest conservation counts as development. It definitely does. I very much agree with what you say.
All right. This is a powerful case study, brothers and sisters. So we're only going to touch on these things today, and we'll probably get back into them at some point in future shows, episodes, so to speak. But we encourage you to research these things for yourself. And no doubt in future episodes we'll get into more detail and give you more resources to do them. But for now, brothers and sisters, do The internet, you know what I'm saying, is alive and well for now. So do get on your search engines and check out, you know, the stories behind these case studies. All right. Question from Kushti. She's asked, got Kush, who decided this? And what is the reasoning they gave for this? So who decided this? And what
is this the Achimota Forest?
Yes, for the Achimota Forest, yes.
Okay, yeah. The reasons will always be that that development thing, to say that yes, it's going to bring employment for the construction workers.
Okay, brothers and sisters, we're dealing with the technicals, yeah? These are some of the challenges in the brothers and sisters of connecting and networking across the African diaspora. Oftentimes, brothers and sisters on the continent or in the Caribbean, you know, sometimes the connection doesn't hold up as strongly as we would like it to, but we will get there, and we just got to negotiate these challenges, all right? So Kushti's asked a question. If you would like to, I'm gonna try as much as possible to take as many questions specific to the case study, yeah, at hand, all right? So do stay tuned. So we're going to try and facilitate it like that. But go ahead, Gbontwi, you were saying? You're on mute, by the way.
So the short answer to that question is that the government that decided to rezone it, and they gave all the usual things around jobs, around for the construction, people that would be employed within the building, whether they be condominiums, Airbnbs, restaurants, the usual kind of noise like that.
Thank you very much. And Anthony over there in Grenada says that that the irony is that Achimota Forest is under protection from building new housing. So apparently, is that the case? That the forest is supposed to be protected from? Right.
Yes,
okay,
that's why they had to rezone it, to say that it's no longer protected.
I understand.
That's not what it was. Completely protected. You know, there's rangers that patrol to make sure that people don't even cut down the trees or firewood. You know what I mean? Like it is and was protected. And because of this scandal, I'm unclear about the status, but nothing has been cut down as we speak. But that rezoning hasn't been reversed.
Yeah, serious thing, brothers and sisters. So this is a very touching story, a very, very moving story. We're gonna classify it now. So let's get into where we gonna put this, Gbontwi. The Achimota. Where we put in Achimota rezoning? Black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, or distraction? Where we saying? Oh. You got a stool there. All right, no worries, brothers and sisters. Gbontwi's falling off. We're gonna get him back. Anthony says, "Got Kush, yeah, man. I didn't know about that our story either about Achimota. Yes, indeed, in relation to the history of the name and how it got the name and its connection to the enslavement of our ancestors. Very, 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 very." Touching and moving history there, brothers and sisters. I'm going to read a few of your comments and be like yourself, Kushti. I'm going to read a few of your comments, family. And we have Anthony saying, it reminds me of the Catholic cathedral that, I mentioned this, yeah. So yeah, so we were thinking along the same lines, Anthony. That Ep2 built in Côte d'Ivoire, the biggest Catholic church in the world. Though very few Catholics live in Côte d'Ivoire. Yes, indeed. Great minds think alike, my brother. And it's a good thing I saw your at gotkushTV, so I could start that comment earlier. So yeah, interesting one. Check that one out though. Check that one out. Yeah, Basilica of Our Lady of Peace. Yeah, in Côte d'Ivoire. It's a magnificent. Magnificent edifice, you know what I'm saying? Built by Felix Ep2. So let me see which ones I haven't read yet. Kushti says, oh, yep, got that one already. Anthony just greeting the family. And then we've got the ones I've read already. All right. So thank you very much. Or if you got questions or comments that you would like read out, please at gotkushTV. Please at gotkushTV. Yeah. Currently at the moment, brothers and sisters, we are exploring some specific case studies. Yeah, some case studies that are, hot stories, in the political economy and the social environment in Ghana. And we are stratifying them according to categories, black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, and distraction, okay? And so these case studies are designed to give you a snapshot of different issues that are affecting the geopolitical landscape in Ghana, okay? And so the first case study that we went through was the cathedral, the Ghana National Cathedral, that was announced in 2017 and is yet to even get beyond the foundation stage, even though it was prospected to cost $100 million, and then that figure was increased from $100 million to $400 million, and the funding sources transitioned from private funding to public funding. That means that it would be, on the bill of the taxpayer. And then we moved on to Achimota rezoning, which is the government basically going against its own dictates in terms of preserving the Achimota forest and trying to rezone 260 to 360 acres of the land of Achimota, presumably for housing, quote unquote, development, brothers and sisters. And so we're about to certify this particular case study. Where we putting it, Gbontwi? Black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption, just plain lazy, or distraction? Where's it going?
For me, it's got to be black skin, white masks.
Black skin, white mask. All right. Explain why. Explain.
You are actually killing yourself for this thing called capitalism. So much of what organizers, activists, Pan-Africanists, whatever you want to call us, talk about is generational stuff. Yeah. So I can understand for people who are on this kind of flights or fights, kind of like frozen sort of thinking. You're talking about things that happened 200 years ago, or you're happy to talk about things that are not going to happen for another 200 years. This is happening right now. There's flooding every year. The houses that have already been built are empty. The condos and the apartments with incredible dollar amounts on them are just there empty. All the real estate people I know are constantly remarking on it, that these things, like, is it a bubble? When is this bubble going to burst? It's like a crazy pathology to me that you will continue to not only try and be building these things when you yourself will also suffer. But that when your own economics, your own neoliberal economics that you're supposed to worship are telling you that there's no market for these things.
Yeah, indeed, my brother. Oh, quality control point. Yeah, the mic on your phone is much better, so stay on that.
Oh, okay.
all right. Okay. Apologies, Anthony. I thought, well, maybe you were in Grenada once, so I've got that mistaken. So big up yourself from wherever you're tuning in from. I love the fact that we're growing with an international audience on gotkushTV from all around the world. So we give thanks to all our viewers. All right, so we stratified two of our case studies, brothers and sisters. The National Cathedral has been stratified as corruption at its finest, and the Achimota, the rezoning of the Achimota forest, has been classified as black skin, white mask. Do you agree with Gbontwi Anyetei, or do you disagree? Put agree or disagree in the chat. And if you disagree, say where would you place, you know what I'm saying, our particular case study under discussion at the moment. All right. And I think Kushti is really feeling this treason category, because I think everything that we said so far, she's put it in treason.
Fine. Yeah.
She's on the treason vibes. You know what I'm saying? She's about that treason life. All right, brothers and sisters. Okay, we're gonna go to our next case study now. Hold on there. Where we going next, Gbontwi Anyetei? Hey, we're going to the PDS deal, Power Distribution Services, Ghana. Why is PDS in the firing line, Gbontwi Anyetei?
This power situation, some context, some of which you'd already be able to assume. Ghana's power situation is terrible. It's badly run. Power currently, which is surprising for an election year, I keep saying, there's a power cut every day. And going back to the year of this deal, it was not quite as bad as this, but still not great. So it's that eternal question that always comes up around national utility companies and things like this. When it's been badly run, even the public are lured into thinking, yes, better we sell it to a private entity, because of course that is how we've been conditioned to think about these things. The way we should think about it is, let's find a way to fix it. It's a national resource. What are we doing wrong with it as a national resource? Bring in consultants if you want, but it must remain national. But yes, this lopsided thinking of, okay, because the thing is badly run, let's not try and fix it, let's instead sell it, persists. And it persists, even though I can't think of many examples of privatization going well. I'm not saying that privatization hasn't created maybe more efficiency within a system, whether it be transport, whether it be any other form of infrastructure, but what has it done for the population of that country? That country has usually lost millions, usually in the original deal, as well as the income that would come from that thing on a yearly basis and things like that. So it's never a good idea, but that is my bias as an Nkrumahist coming through. Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah was a very, very big believer in Ghana retaining all deeds, to use a monopoly term, and would only brook some private-public partnerships, but that at the very least, this would just stay home. So what happened with this deal? Literally $350 million is what it cost, is what officially sort of what was going to cost for this privatization to take place. Right. And they only the deal with PDS now being in charge officially only lasted for 3 years. So for 3 weeks, I should say, for 3 weeks, and the whole deal collapsed, and it returned to ECG, which is the Ghana Utility Company, which is the electric company of Ghana. Unbelievable scandal. What happened with the due diligence? Who pocketed what? How much of that 350 million has been returned to our coffers? What is accounted for? I have literally never heard of a utility deal, a privatization thing, collapsing after 3 weeks. And the accusation was that there was something fraudulent. And if it was fraudulent, how come there was no due diligence and investigation into the company that it was being sold to before that took place? Yeah.
So you say 3 weeks, yeah?
3 weeks was were warned that there would be some instability because there's a new takeover, management, blah blah. Yes. And then within 3 weeks, the whole deal had collapsed, and we were told that power management was returning to ECG control.
Forgive me if you mentioned this, but who was the private company corporation? Who are they? Where they come from?
Yeah,
Like,
I have that. I have that in my notes.
Yeah.
Apologies if I go off.
No, go ahead. All right, brothers and sisters, we're talking about Power Distribution Services Ghana and a deal that was struck here for the very large sum of 350 million US dollars in 2019, but didn't last about 3 weeks, before the electricity had to be returned to state ownership. Go ahead, Gbontwi. Oh, I thought he was back. Okay, we're gonna get Gbontwi back in a second. We've just asked him about the people who were behind this private, ownership deal. And so we're going to look into that in a second, brothers and sisters. For those who are just arriving, this is Ghana, Democracy Under Fire. We're engaging in some specific case studies about geopolitical, economic, social issues within the Ghana landscape and stratifying them according to our table, which I'm going to show you right about now. And so we have just gone through the Ghana National Cathedral and the rezoning of the Achimota Forest. Two very, very important stories. And we are stratifying these stories into black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, or distraction. Looking at, way government and other institutions have related and organized around these issues, specifically from the perspective of having knowledge of what is actually taking place and the dynamics on the ground. And this is very, very important because oftentimes what happens is we're using indicators that are very generic and that are designed to really fit into other people's indicators of what success looks like. As Brother Gbontwi was saying earlier, in terms of the political weaponizing of the term development. Development is a good thing, right? But when you pull it in the context of global geopolitics as it stands right about now, development is very much a term that is dictated and dominated and defined by neocolonial interests, neocolonial dictates and neocolonial standards. Okay, and so we're dealing with a story about the fact that electricity, as far as the Power Distribution Services of Ghana is concerned, and the state-owned service, basically a deal was struck. For $350 million. And the electricity was supposed to be privatized under the banner of PDS, Power Distribution Services Ghana. And this deal fell through rather swiftly within the space of 3 weeks. Okay, so it looks like the deal was not sufficient. So I'm just asking Gbontwi, what was it? Who were the people behind this privatization attempt that fell through? Like, who were the people behind it that were responsible and who came in, and what was the deal? Okay, so we're gonna get Gbontwi back in right now. So yes, Gbontwi, do we know who was who were the people that were behind this private corporation?
It was an American company, Millennium Development. Again, that word is becoming so problematic. Yes, it was. I wanted to confirm that it was an American company. And point of correction, the contract was signed in March 2019, and the deal had collapsed by July. So that's actually 3 months, not 3 weeks.
3 months, not 3 weeks. Okay, understood. So, and do we know? So, American corporation comes in. By the way, Gbontwi, are you saying now that because you started by speaking about the fact that we've been conditioned to think that when something is not running well, the solution is to go for privatization. Are you suggesting that the government is in fact a good provider of energy, in this instance, electricity for the nation of Ghana. And why would you not? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? If you're not saying that, then why would you not go for privatization?
I mean, this is the question. This is why you always then need ideology, and you need vision, because as Africans, we are not in a position that we can just go for what you might take as a pragmatic view.
Yes.
You have got to take a view that provides for your nation, generationally. And so by privatization, it's the same conversation as when we let foreign interests come and mine our resources. The question is always, do you have the capacity to do that? The answer is, of course, always no, because we have been underdeveloped under colonialism, and then we have been further underdeveloped under neo-colonialism. When you hear about mining equipment that can turn directions and all sorts, we do not have these things. But to think with, first of all, vision, because you understand that we don't know now, we can learn, that takes vision. And to think in terms of ideology, to say that, listen, who should own the means of production? It has to remain with the people of this nation. That then precludes any kind of privatization, because a private entity, rightly so, under the ideology of capitalism, is coming in to exploit.
Yeah.
They have absolutely no interest in empowering you. They have no interest in improving your condition. They are here to make money and to spend as little money as possible in doing it.
Yeah, you know what's interesting to me, Gbontwi, that the it's like some years ago when Vodafone took over the national telecom service in Ghana. Yeah. And it's also a thing whereby I don't know a nation like at the moment. I don't know if you caught this story recently about the fact that Britain is trying to put China under sanctions, economic sanctions at the moment, because it is saying that China is hacking into the servers of politicians and trying to influence the outcome of the UK election. And so there's a group of who are trying to get the parliament to basically agree to sanctions on China. But the part why I say that is because no serious nation, especially the one that understands the threats, that are out there as far as its enemies are concerned, or even its competitors are concerned, is going to give over the something as serious as a telecom or the energy, right?
Exactly.
To a private corporation, especially one from a foreign nation, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like it will never happen. And if they do business with private corporations, they're going to be doing it based upon infrastructure that is regulated by the government, right? You know what I'm saying? So,
100%.
Right. So yeah.
Too much of the time, we believe the hype. We believe the hype. When Americans talk about free market economics, we actually think that they believe in free market economics.
Yes.
And everything says that they don't. So I've not heard about this British story, but I have heard about America versus TikTok. So here you have a situation where a private app, I think most of the users of the app won't feel it's any different from all the other apps. Facebook, American owned, Instagram, American owned, WhatsApp even, more communication thing, but it's also American owned. They won't think of it, they won't think anything of it. But here comes TikTok, Chinese owned, and Americans have an issue with it. And so they are showing that no, we preach this free market thing, but we have absolutely no belief that free market economics should trump national sovereignty and national security concerns. But unfortunately, on the continent, it's the opposite. We've made a god of this free market economics, which not only does it not exist, but it's wounding us economically. It's wounding us, spiritually, as far as how we make our decisions. as far as our ability to, you know, have any agency as a country, as individuals within the country. Yeah. So it's a serious problem.
I asked that question about who the company was because I was also interested to know if that it might happen to be, you know, actual Ghanaians, behind this private company, but it's actually not the case. On finally, on your point, before we put this into a certification, it's necessary to also note that that there's a significant amount as far as energy, you know, sources, gas and electricity, a significant amount of that, even in the quote unquote developed world, in Western countries that promote what you were saying earlier, as well as free market economics, there's a significant amount of publicly owned energy. Even in America, there are whole states whereby the major electricity supply is supplied by the state government. And so that's a you know, another story for another time, but let's bear that in mind, because when we are propagandized too, as Africans, we are told that we can only you know, provide sufficient energy if we allow our energy sources to be privately owned by foreign corporations, usually from Britain and America and Canada and Germany. All right, so to bear that in mind. All right, let's get into this, the stratification now. Gbontwi Anyetei, the power distribution services. Where are we placing this one?
It's got to be treason. This one's straight up treason.
Treason. All right, Kushti, you're in business. Treason, we say. Sell out the thing. They say they're betraying the interest of the people. Is that why you're placing it in treason?
Absolutely, absolutely. If you describe, not only did you do all the things you've just described, but you then admit that you did it to a fraudulent entity. So you've done this thing and you are telling us that you didn't do your due diligence. This is not a company that all of a sudden became fraudulent. They must be fraudulent when you were talking to them. So where was the due diligence? So any way you look at it is treason.
I'd be interested to know if the institution like the IMF and the World Bank had a hand in these negotiations, and how it got past them. You know what I'm saying? How it got past them, you know. But that's a issue for more investigation. I'm sure we'll do that for a future episode. All right, brothers and sisters. So we've got one black skin, white mask, one treasonable offense, and one corruption at its finest. You know what I'm saying? So let's go on to our next story now. We've dealt with so far the National Cathedral of Ghana. We've dealt with Achimota rezoning. We've dealt with the PDS deal. And now we're going to do with cannabis, ganja, marijuana, kushumpeng, lamb's bread, and all of the other beautiful names. Campet, and akpet, I think they call it in parts of Nigeria, and Igbo. Yes. All right. Sorry, Gbontwi. You know, I am, you know, an African from Jamaica, so we can never use one word for the marijuana. We have to list off the whole. You know what I mean? The whole list. All right, so the cannabis laws, and now this is an interesting one because I'm sure that most people are not aware. Ghana is not a nation that you often hear about in relation to the good marijuana. So let's get into this one. What are we saying about this one?
First of all, don't get too excited. This is a law not around the cannabis as it's mostly popularized. To be fair, as soon as the conversation of cannabis comes up, it's straight away, the smoking. This one wasn't about the smoking. This one was about the industrial and medical applications. But let's actually the industrial to start with. So this is another really interesting one. All of these are interesting, but this one's really, really interesting.
Yes.
So like so many of these things that take place in Ghana, we were just sitting minding our own business, and then we heard that this law had just got passed on a random.
Hey, all right, brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Gbontwi has been affected by the breakdown of the deal between the Ghana government and Power Distribution Services Ghana. So we'll be back shortly, I'm sure. But we're about to get into the cannabis, the marijuana, the hemp, the lamb's bread, the ganja, the kushumpeng. Pass it over. Yes, indeed, brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to everyone in the chat asking, is it legal? You have to go to Ghana and find out. You know, it. You have to go to Ghana and find out. And all of these things. No, but no, it's not legal in Ghana. But as Gbontwi said, though, yeah, that we're not even discussing it in terms of the smoking of it for recreational purposes. Liquor, as it's known, marijuana, and in all its variations, in all its hemp variations, has industrial usages. The medical usages are more well known, yeah, but the industrial usages are lesser well known, and it's a whole story in terms of the extent to which the hemp industry has been stifled because it represents, you know, sustainable methods of industrial usages in many different ways, and there are many people that are campaigning on it, particularly from the islands of the Caribbean, and as you might appreciate, Jamaica, because of its economic viability, not just, you know, for medicine, but for also even things like concrete. And you know what I'll do? Within a week or two, I will share a show on that particular subject as it relates to the island of Jamaica specifically. So do stay tuned for that. But we're going to be talking about it today in relation to the nation of Ghana. And this is an interesting topic because, as I said, many people don't necessarily discuss Ghana, in fact, the African continent in general, in relation to the issue of cannabis. And so we're going to get into that little more, brothers and sisters. If you would like your comment read out, please at gotkushTV. If you would like your comment read out, please at gotkushTV. We are putting some case studies into stratifications as it relates to the framework that Gbontwi Anyetei has given us for today's conversation. And so we've discussed 3 different stories: National Cathedral of Ghana, Power Distribution Services of Ghana, and the cutting down of the Achimota forest. I'm still moved, you know, by the story behind the naming of Achimota. It's interesting. For those who are just joining us, Achimota is a forest that is in Accra, Ghana, the capital city of Ghana. And it is the home of a golf course, as well as a school, yeah, the most famous secondary school, high school in Ghana that was, you know, developed by the colonizer. It was previously named after Prince, forget the prince, yeah, but then it was renamed. But in order to build the golf course and the school, they had to cut down the forest. And so since independence, the forest has been a protected area, yes, within Accra, and recently the government has seen fit to try and rezone 260 to 360 acres, yeah, in the name of quote unquote development. And so there's a movement in Ghana as it stands at the moment to try and save the forest. And we saw some demonstrators pictured, and one of them said, conservation of the forest is also development. Yeah, and Gbontwi Anyetei was saying that we have to redefine this terminology development. We have to redefine this terminology development. You know what I'm saying? I'm very familiar with that terminology, yeah, you know what I'm saying, in terms of how it is used in a geopolitical context, and we'll get into that more in future presentations. We're just awaiting for the re-arrival of Gbontwi Anyetei, because the Power Distribution Services of Ghana are kind of negatively affecting the movements as it stands at the moment, brothers and sisters. But we are pleased for you to be here with us for episode 2 of Ghana Democracy Under Fire, where we are developing on an exploration of the geopolitical situation in Ghana in the lead up to the general election taking place in Ghana on December the 7th. All right. There is also an election taking place in Jamaica. We'll touch on that at some point as well. There's also elections taking place in the UK. We'll also touch on that. And Gbontwi Anyetei, who has visited the nation of Senegal would be aware of the fact that there's been a significant development in the nation of Senegal recently with the election of a president, the replacing of Macky Sall and the election of President Faye. And we're gonna get into that in a future show, brothers and sisters. But enough interesting things are taking place in West Africa, particularly French-speaking West Africa, as it stands at the moment, brothers and sisters. So do stay tuned for that. Maybe later on in the show, Gbontwi, I'll get your opinion on the election of Faye if you have one. But for now, we were getting into this story about the marijuana, the cannabis, the hemp, the ganja. So go ahead. You were saying that we're not talking about the recreational or even the medicinal usages. We're talking about it in terms of its industrial applications. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it was all about the industrial, but like I said, it was passed in really, unusual way. But I was pleasantly surprised. I have an agri-business, currently processing commodities into oils, and we're definitely looking at getting into fiber processing, especially the leaves and plants of things into fibers. And if your audience are unaware, cannabis fiber is extremely strong for construction, textiles. Actually, historically throughout Europe, hemp for those things was a highly popular material. So yeah, we got very excited about that. That took place during COVID, the COVID year. Like I said, and then there was no activity. There was no activity for about 2 years. We would ask what's happening with the licensing. You couldn't just get into cultivating anyhow. It was you still had to have a license and all of this. And the licenses were not being issued for 2 years. Nothing took place. And then all of a sudden, in 2022, a woman, I don't know the woman's name, I don't think the woman's name was ever made public, lodged an injunction at the Supreme Court to say that there was something unconstitutional about the process through which the cannabis law went. Which is of course true, because like I said, it was passed, I think it was a Friday night, maybe a Thursday night. We heard about it 8, 9 p.m. Totally not done. So she was right, whoever she was, whatever her agenda was. Once again, unclear, because like I said, for 2 years, there was no activity. There's rumors that certain political players got into sort of industrial cannabis production. I've not been able to find any details, and definitely nothing that can be corroborated. But yeah, that was there. So that whole law was the Supreme Law held up her action, and that whole law was pronounced. So that took place in 2022. It's 2 years after the original law was passed. Then fast forward to last year, the law comes back again, and this time with the medicinal. So it's a better law. In 2023, it passed this time in a more holy hour, and it is said that this time with medicinal, all of that license as usual. Still, again, you could cultivate and process for industrial purposes and for medicinal. So that means for the medicinal, anything under 0.02 THC. THC is, the higher the THC, the more recreational. But yeah, fast forward to now, still no licenses, still no official action on it.
So this is mad. So they pass a law saying that you can cultivate cannabis for industrial purposes. They pass a law saying that you can cultivate it for medicinal, but just don't do anything with the law. And nothing's happening. Interesting. So yeah, this is
we would need to get a man on here called Kweku Ajiman.
Right.
You may know of him. Another formerly UK-based Ghanaian.
Right.
And yeah, he has been one of the biggest of movers and shakers around decriminalizing cannabis, this industrial use element.
Right.
And yeah, it's just really criminal that they went halfway with a decent law. Cannabis is going to be huge. You know, it's already, well, even as it was, you could argue it was already a multi-billion corporation, when it was basically illegal everywhere.
Right.
Except for like Holland and then a couple of other. No, I don't think it's not all of Holland. It's just Amsterdam, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that recreational level, and then you've got these cannabis repositories and things in the US, and it's already in its millions. The industrial use, all official and everything, because we're talking about construction and we're talking about clothing. Both of those things at any given time are worth billions, if not trillions, on their own. And so it's really criminal that it's just basically been left half done. So yeah, we're basically in what's the word? In limbo with this one.
So let me get this straight now. When we talk about the law that was passed, was the government itself engaged in cannabis cultivation, or were they supposed to be supplying contracts to others who are supposed to be engaging in cannabis cultivation?
No information.
No information.
No information at all on that. There's just no kind of clarity at all.
Right. So you really
about what the long-term plan was. It literally was going to be like the cocoa, like the arrangement with cocoa. Highly politicized commodity. You have to have a license. It's not just something you can get up and start sort of growing and cultivating. So it was that. We were prepared for that element of it. But there's no machinery has been set up to say, okay, this is the process by which we are going to, licenses are going to be issued or anything like that. Yeah.
Interesting. And I'm very interested in this one because the prohibition on cannabis is around the world is really just the dictate of the American government, and it's banning it around the world. And so the releasing and the decriminalization of it, and also the legalization of it, is often follows wherever the dictates of America are, even in Jamaica. I remember a few years ago, a few years before America went into legalization in certain states, under the premiership of Bruce Golding, I think it was. There was always campaigns, right, to legalize herb, right? And his response literally was, we have to, in making this decision, we have to consider our relationship with America. And so the regulation of this thing and how it develops tends to be following a particular model rather than any kind of autonomous order that we have among ourselves. All right, so let's I have a feeling I know where this one's gonna go. Where we put in the cannabis law?
That for me is just plain lazy.
Plain laziness. Plain laziness.
Plain lazy. It reminds me of the this is the previous government that did this. They passed a law literally in the last month of government, the National Film Classification Act. Once again, another great sounding law. It was supposed to come with a film authority. It was supposed to come with a film fund, and all sorts of things. And as a writer, with that hat on, it was very much something that excited me. But what good is a law that gets passed of an hour? Like at the final hour. A month left. And literally, I think at this point, the government had been removed. An election had taken place. So Muhammad knew he had lost, and he passes this law. So there's all this stuff. I mean, for me, it's kind of like beneath me and beneath this conversation. There's this stuff around these political parties. They don't want to be too on the wrong side of history. They're aware that history is going to judge them very adversely, but they want to throw a bone here and there. So certain things that are inevitable. So Muhammad with film and the creative sector, and then Akufo-Addo with this cannabis thing. He knows that it's going to go a particular way. Let them pass the law. Let them get their name on the footnote of the law being passed. And then anything to do with the actual machinery. But this is stuff that's not scientific. It's not. There's no rhyme or reason. It's kind of hard to even speak to that. So for me, definitely lazy. Yeah.
All right, cool. And it's unfortunate if you understand the nature of the fact that this thing actually has many usages, from, like I said, industrial concrete to clothing. That could be very, very useful, viable within our economies. And what generally happens is that when we pass the laws, what generally happens is that American corporations flood in, and take over the industry. So it comes back to privatization again. You're basically creating a market and a playground for American corporations to dominate your market, and also to price your indigenous production or your indigenous producers out of the market because they can't compete. Because those American corporations often come with subsidies from their government,
exactly.
Right, in America, and we can't compete with that. You know what I'm saying? So it's an interesting one. All right, brothers and sisters. So Gbontwi Anyetei has placed the cannabis law and it's the inaction around it after it was passed in the category of just plain laziness on the part of the Ghanaian government. Do you agree or disagree? Let us know in the chat. And if you disagree, let us know where you would place that particular one. And we're going to go to the next case study now. And it's the one that was dominating the headlines just about a few weeks ago. And this is the LGBTQ law in Ghana. There seems to be some confusion around even exactly what was signed on this one, Gbontwi Anyetei. But go ahead, break it down.
I mean, that's the thing. It hasn't been signed. So this LGBTQ, I think like most of your audience will be familiar with the toings and froings of this. This started arguably because of money that a school authority in Ghana took from some kind of LGBTQ friendly agency to include some material in school books, which spoke to anything other than sort of heterosexual parents situation. And so it started with that. Then there was kind of like some backlash. Well, actually quite a lot, really. And then fast forward to a couple of years, a consortium, if you want, or actually a committee created the paperwork for this LGBTQ law, which has become notorious worldwide now. And to say that yes, it should be. There's some debate. It depends on how you read it. Like it is with so many laws. That does it actually penalize the practice? Does it penalize the promotion of? I'm not going to get into all of that right now. But definitely the law was passed, and interestingly, it was passed by both sides. Once again, that collusion element, both sides of Parliament. So that's the sitting government NPP and the opposition NDC all agreed to pass it. All voted for it, and then now. Akufo-Addo is refusing to or delaying with the actual signing of it to become law. Yeah,
interesting. And so this dominated the headlines a couple weeks ago. And brothers, this is stay tuned because we got an episode where we're going to be looking at this even more. So do stay tuned. In a future episode, we're going to be delving into the subject a bit more as far as things are concerned. But I've seen Nana Akufo-Addo developing a significant amount of social capital or political capital off of the profiling of this particular issue. How significant an issue is it among the general Ghanaian populace, Gbontwi Anyetei? Just say specifically as it relates to this particular law.
Oh, to the law now, because of all the fear mongering and controversy kind of like mining that has taken place. It's a big deal now.
Right.
It's become polarized. It's to be pro-LGBTQ is to be pro-Europe and pro-Western manipulation within within our jurisdiction. And then to be anti is to be Ghanaian, is to be patriotic. I would swear on anything that if before all of this, let's say 7 years ago, 8 years ago, had asked 1 million Ghanaians, 100 laws that should be passed to improve the conditions and improve the country. Nobody would have mentioned a law against LGBTQ. Nobody would have.
Right.
But then with all of this back and forth, and the crazy thing about it is it's the same colonial metric and maneuvering taking place still. Many Ghanaians think that this, let's call it anti-LGBTQ law thing, is of indigenous, authentic Ghanaian engineering. Right. And it's not, it's not, the same sort of American South gospel fundamental white church people that are funding this thing around the continent, this agenda around the continent, are the same people funding the thing here. And it's actually something that Ghanaians have no problem not, believing, because unfortunately it's known that most laws that get passed and sort of all the work that goes into the machinery of it is funded by somebody. There is a payout, there is cash outs. So they know it's from somebody, but it's a kind of like, well, lesser of two evils. We'd rather take Texas, Mississippi, Tennessee, whichever one of those states these guys come from. We'll rather take their money than DC, New York, San Francisco people who are saying the pro LGBTQ stuff. So it's become very polarized now because of that. Polarizing.
What's the story though behind the fact that he never actually signed it? No, Kofi never actually signed it. What's the that seemed to come out like over a week after the big uproar about the fact that this bill was actually signed. So, but then he never actually signed it. What's the story behind that?
I mean, for me, and this is a straight opinion thing. This is not sitting with any of my sort of political beliefs and ideologies. Like it's cowardice.
Right.
He could have spiked this.
Right.
He could have spiked this at a government level because he's still the majority. So he could have had his people to, shut it down. But of course, the whole thing has become a political football now.
Right.
And why the LGBTQ thing needs discussing is basically the only position that Africans have an objection to European influence on. Right. Which is crazy to me. Our wardrobe, our economics, our spirituality, so many things we are open to being dictated to. But this is for so many like the last straw. It's very historically flawed as far as we consider our last line that can't be crossed. But so it's because of the political football, he can't be seen to be, have his people spike it because then his party are officially pro-LGBTQ, pro-Europe in that sense.
That's right.
Keeping in mind, the man has already said he's pro. He called himself a Francophile. So he's already said he's pro. He's pro-Europe. Right. The MPP colors, which can't be understated, are red, white, and blue.
Yes.
So they have got that long laid agenda of being pro-European, but this is
definitely.
So for him, the delay in not signing, they are using supreme law shenanigans, similar to the cannabis law. A man went and registered his dissatisfaction with the law to say that it's unconstitutional.
Right.
For what it's worth, it definitely seems to be unconstitutional. You have got a law that says, in part, it could be interpreted to say that if you have attended some sort of LGBTQ wedding anywhere else in the world,
yeah,
if you come to Ghana, you can be arrested, you can be prosecuted, which is really funny.
Yeah,
really
that's
funny.
Yeah.
And
it sounds
so it's like, the thing was sort of destined to failure, and the loudest mouth in this thing, Sam George, he is on video while his party were in government, saying that this LGBTQ thing is not a big situation. We have bigger things
to deal with. Right.
And after saying that, a few years later, when he's outside of government and he can make signing this and whatever loss of income and blah 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 blah, some other government's problem, is the political football that this thing has become. To Western ears, I know the LGBTQ struggle is going on and the conversation is going on like around the world in different ways. But the level of political football is that I can only compare it to immigration.
Right. I understand.
In that Western lens, as in neither party is really particularly against it. Anybody sensible knows what immigration does for your economy. But they have to pretend that they're somehow against it, and they don't want to be the ones to pass certain things, but they'll enforce it. It's that LGBTQ thing all the way.
Interesting. All right, where we placing it, Gbontwi?
For me, it's a distraction. It's a law that didn't need to. It's a law that didn't need to be. It's really fascinating to watch so many Ghanaians complaining about the fact that Akufo-Addo's finding excuses to sign it, not to sign it. Sorry. When the same thing is taking place with the cannabis law.
Right.
It's the same delay there. So multiple questions arise. If it's an agenda for him delaying and signing this one, what's the agenda in him delaying and signing the cannabis one? And then why are you not angry about a cannabis law which can create employment and industry for you and your family?
Right.
You're not getting mad about that, and you're instead getting mad about a that's not going to make any money for anybody. The only people that are going to make money from this is police officers occasionally who catch these guys, and then they take money to look the other way, kind of thing. That's what it's going to be. Nobody is going to go to jail.
I'm gonna add to what you're saying in terms of a distraction, because I find that some people who would claim to be Pan-Africanist or any iteration of pro-black who are railing against the imposition of this from a Western perspective, which is an argument that I would certainly engage in, as far as the way it's being weaponized by Western powers at the moment. But this is that I don't take Pan-Africanists seriously who begin to defend no neo-colonial leaders because they've quote unquote stood firm, right, on the LGBT thing. Like it's the same with Museveni. Like Museveni's been the biggest sellout for a generation in Uganda, and because of this one issue, we've got people that are hailing him up as some kind of defender of African values. Like, this is madness, right? Just what I'm saying. So like it's a bit unfortunate how easy it is for us to just be have our emotions riled over nonsense issue. Like I don't know, man. You know what I'm saying? It's a silly one. But yeah, so we're gonna
because anybody who's making that, you're making all kinds of all kinds of fallacies. One, the person's entire established pattern is selling you out and putting themselves ahead of the public good. That's the entire MO. Right. And then secondly, there's the whole conversation about LGBTQ in Africa historically, which is a whole conversation.
In and of itself, yeah.
And then on top of that, it's who is funding these laws. These are not indigenous things that came up from somewhere. Somebody is engineering these things. So it's the same Western influence, but just in a different axis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yep. All right. Well, brothers and sisters, we're going to be getting into this in a future episode, so do stay tuned for that conversation. Let's get into our next case study. By the way, we're only like halfway through the case studies. This like we're like
we have to try to get through these faster.
Yeah. So we'll get through them faster. Right? So we're gonna pick up the pace, brothers and sisters. Yeah, we're gonna pick up the pace.
Yeah,
right?
Cecilia Dapar, in some ways, an extraordinary corruption case. Her husband comes home one day to catch two of his house helps. Or actually the family's house helps. That's kind of like how do you describe waiting staff? Help.
Yeah, I guess
staff in the house. Carrying out loads of money, and so he calls the police, and the police come in, arrest the house helps who are stealing, but then question why they've got so much money in like in their spare room. It was a lot of money. The news of this started breaking, and we started hearing about it piecemeal. At first, we heard it was like, Ghana must go cases full of money, something around the cities, kind of like half, Ghana money, 500,000 cities or so, and then in the final analysis, it was $1 million in $1 million American currency, 300,000 euros, and then I think it was 80,000 Ghana cedis, all in money, all just packed out in the house. And so this has become a proper circus, This woman was the sanitation minister. Sanitation. So when you think about the fact that she's
sorry, just to clarify, she was the sanitation minister for the MPP government, so under
for this current government.
Right. Go ahead.
Sanitation minister with this kind of money in her house, you can only imagine what the big ministry people have in their houses.
Right.
And so it turned into these are what the tweets relate to. So let's go for some of the tweets. I was trying to go for this quite fast as well.
All right. Hold on. Let's get to them. We're gonna get to some tweets now, brothers and sisters, and you may not be able to see them, so I'll read them. Yeah. We'll start with which one you want to start with. This. Let me know.
Let's start with the next one, the one after this one. Yeah. No, the previous one. This one right here. So, this captures a lot. First of all, the FBI joining was really interesting.
Should I read the tweet out?
Yeah, go on then.
All right. So it says breaking. Ghana, America, Ghana flag, America flag. The FBI has joined the Office of Special Prosecutor in a synchronized effort delving deep into the matters of former Sanitation Minister Cecilia Dapar. Their joint investigation will span assets and financial transactions tied to Ms. Dapar within the US. Interesting. This cooperative crusade seeks to unravel the legality surrounding the wealth amassed by Ms. Dapar and her cohorts, traversing the corridors of both Ghana and the United States. Go ahead, Gbontwi.
Yeah, so this is kind of like representative of much of the news that was coming out. The America's interest apparently was in the dollars. I'm not sure of the specifics, but apparently there are certain dollars that are not supposed to leave American shores, and apparently those dollars were in were in her find. And so the whole thing's immense. We don't know how much the staff had stolen. That's unclear. Her husband even calling the police really speaks to the way the system is broken, in the sense of how does a politician's husband, I should say, sorry, in this context, call the police when you have unexplained money. But as far as he was concerned, he just wanted the people punished without needing to explain where the money came from.
Right.
So it was that kind of thing. So I think it was really just a matter of either luck or maybe political bias on the behalf of the police, perhaps, that this sort of became public and wasn't sort of brushed under the rug with the stealing house helps. If you can call stealing publicly stolen funds stealing. I feel like Kuti had a line about stealing from thieves.
Authority in authority stealing, he said, I'll remember it in a second. Give me a sec. I'll remember it. Go.
So yeah, it's that. But yeah, let's go. The next tweet kind of speaks to something else that I wanted to talk to around this whole situation, right? So we can see that the court orders the OSP, that's the Office of the Special Prosecutor, to return the seized funds to her, which in any kind of like functional country would, and rightly so, shock that, hold on, how is money that is unexplained going to be returned to her? But that, unfortunately, is some of what we're talking about around the level of state capture, the level of breakage to the system that would be returned to her, but that the investigation should continue because he was not able to prove that the money is stolen. And so once again, you've got whole essays here. Because of our neo-colonial state, we are stuck with this kind of like British law around innocent until proven guilty. So although you've got a political figure in a role serving the public, money in her house, you still have to prove her guilt and all of that kind of thing. And that the money directly came from somewhere. And because our money, so many of the corruptions that take place are untraceable, money in the back of cars and all of this kind of thing, is going to be really, really hard to prove. But at the very least, like the Americans did with Al Capone and many other criminals, it's at least a tax evasion situation. How have you got all that money that hasn't been taxed in your house? But yeah, this case looks like one of many that will never see justice. Maybe it will, with her government about to leave power.
Right.
But at the same time, too, she also resigned, which is unusual with these things. Surprisingly, you would think that every time there's a hint of corruption, the person has to resign. But actually, with this, usually they stubbornly remain until you are able to sort of prove definitively the corruption.
Interesting. All right, and you got one more tweet or set of tweets?
Go back to that. Let's go back to that second thing and go down the scroll.
Okay, I'd have to enlarge. Well, I can't enlarge it, but yeah, go on. No, I can't.
You can't really enlarge, no?
No, but I can read it if you want me to. I can see it to read it.
Yeah, okay, you can read the first tweet there by Kwame Charles.
It's not Kwame. It's this one says awakened conscience. Is that Kwame Charles?
Okay, you know the second. There's one.
Yeah. Kwame Charles. I can see the second one. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And it says, and how much did the NDC stole during their tenure? Vote wisely. Like the MDC, add money to Ghanaian coffers and don't steal. Come again, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So like the MDC don't add money to Ghanaian coffers and don't steal. So basically, he's saying that even though she's MPP, the NDC steal just as much.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a response to, like you said, the Awaken Conscious post where he says the Kolebu renal unit got closed down because of just Ghana cities, mind you, 5 million.
Yeah.
And 19 innocent children died, and she stole $20 million. Vote wisely. And so the response here from Kwame Charles is really, really deep, because it is very representative of kind of like the bots and the trolls that patrol political posts, basically defending and rationalizing to within an inch of their lives everything that sort of takes place. It's tragic because these guys are poor. If you've got time to be on the internet justifying something that politicians have done, you yourself are of the beleaguered proletariat, and very likely you're gonna have family members, mothers, girlfriends, whatever that need those hospitals, or yourself. And there's a case in Nigeria of one of their trolls for Tinubu, who was criticizing Peter Obi all the time, who just died also, I think, just a few months ago. And her death was met with a lot of a lack of sympathy, which I could understand, because she had a lot of sort of unkind things to say about people that were criticizing Tinubu. And then it was the same Tinubu regime that killed her, because she was tweeting about her hospital stay, how she couldn't pay for certain procedures that she needed, and then she died. And so I think the point I'm trying to make with all these things is that with a lot of these things, these are not far away abstract issues. These are things that snap back on you really, really quickly.
Yeah.
All right. And also the fact that these guys are organized. We've got to keep that in mind. The level of organization with these guys. These bots never turn up during the heat of a saga, the heat of a scandal, when the news first drops, when people are angry, oh my God. They always turn up like a week later, when people are starting to get tired, apathy is about to creep in, hyper-normalization, as the community called it, is about to take place. And these guys come in and they sort of help to kick dust over the situation and say, yeah, this is Ghana for you, that kind of TIA attitude. So it really shows that they're organized. They're funded by certain political figures. Cambridge Analytica documentary spoke to how social media is used to manipulate. And even somebody like me who's aware that so many of these accounts, and it's not, of course, just related to this, it's related to basically so many topics. I put bots and paid sort of troll accounts as the biggest engineers of a lot of the Twitter beefs between continental Africans and historical diaspora in America, gender wars between black men and black women, and then a new one that they're trying to engineer between black people, like fully black, if that such a thing exists, and mixed race people. That's a new one that they're trying to really instigate. So you know that these people are bots. You know that the points of view that they're speaking to hardly appear off of social media, but in the time, it still emotionally gets that effect from you that you get indignant about things that are. And for me, speaking for myself, I get really concerned that certain movements will get traction, and that ignorance will spread. So it is very, very damaging. So something has to be done about these bot accounts.
You want to touch on this last set of tweets, or we good?
So this tweet, same thing about the bots from Kofi Bafwa, saying she didn't steal. Correction, she didn't steal nothing. Where is the proof? And which courts convicted her of a crime?
Right.
So it's a very short tweet, but there's a lot going on. It's that same thing about this courts situation that is really serving as a protection because of the burden of proof as it goes. So it doesn't matter that she's a political figure. It doesn't matter that everybody knows, inverted commas. I think the excuse she gave for the money was that it was money that she collected for a funeral.
serious thriller on that.
For a funeral and stuff like this. And so, yeah, it's really tragic that people that are really going to suffer from this are the ones defending. Jimmy, whose money did she steal? Jimmy's like kind of calling somebody stupid. Whose money did she steal? Do you have evidence? And all of this. And then he makes a comment says, NDC people, you are stupid.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if the person who's the original tweet that it doesn't sound like a sort of like NDC pro account. But that's one of the things that we will be talking about later on, this kind of like forced partisanship.
Right.
To criticize the government as it is to be a follower, a believer in the other regime, in NDC. And it's extremely damaging on so many levels. It reduces conversation. It limits in the minds of so many Ghanaians the understanding that many ideologies exist. It's not just this two-party system that we've been forced into. And don't represent different political ideologies. They actually represent the same political ideology. They're both capitalist. They're both neoliberal puppets.
Yes. Indeed. Yeah, I couldn't. This relates something that you said at the beginning of the show in terms of how armed robbers, and I've seen this. So not armed robbers, but even petty thieves, quote unquote, will get licked down in the streets in Ghana. But politicians thief millions and you know. And I couldn't remember the specific line from the Fela Kuti song, but I am remembering Authority Stealing, where he explains it like this. He says, "Armed robber, him need gun. Authority man, him need pen. What's it called? Authority man in charge of money, him not need gun, him need pen. Pen get power, gun not get. If gun 80,000 naira, pen go steal 2 billion naira." And then he says, "You not gonna hear them shout at all, thief, thief, thief." Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So get me, it's bad. Like it's like Fela Kuti is a genius. Yeah, as we've already said, if you can't listen to this podcast, if you are not an established appreciator of the genius of Fela and Nicola Kuti. So please, if you have not got your Fela card yet, go and get it after this particular episode. All right, we got to be faster, so we're gonna stratify this one now. Where are we putting government minister Celia Dapper?
Yeah, what do you think? I was thinking about putting it in treasonable offense, but maybe corruption at its finest, because it is corruption.
Corruption is the most obvious one, but it is treasonable as well. But
let's put in treason. Let's put in treason.
Sure, all right.
Because I would argue that the system that's keeping her out of away from being punished is treasonable, that we're still maintaining that. We've got lawyers wearing British wigs, because of the layers of support that this system of law gives, that is not matched by efficiency within our police. They've got this facts. Safety blanket is not the right word. They've got multiple mattresses of protection from prosecution, because it can't be proven, and then you've got this kind of system of law that is supposed to be matched with at least an efficient police system, which we don't have.
Incidentally, Fela and Nicola Kuti also has a song called Mattress, but that's a totally different subject. All right, brothers and sisters, we are going to go for. Oh, by the way, before we go on, let me just say this here. Bearing in mind, this particular, I don't want to lose the thing. I have to make the typical revolutionary Pan-Africanist point that what we see here is the fact that the American establishment seems very, very well all up and through this particular corruption, okay? Because her money is not just in Ghana, but it's also in the United States of America, all right? And so when we say that corruption in Africa and the Caribbean is a foreign export, it's what we mean. It couldn't happen. It couldn't happen if it wasn't sanctioned by Britain and America and France and all of them. And so when we are lampooning rightly when we are lampooning our governments, we must remember that they are clients. Yeah, our government ministers are clients of other governments, and many of us feel comfortable. We're comfortable, you know, as long as the lampooning of governments remains. Yeah, in the auspices of governments with blackface, we'll say, you know, the government is corrupt, but we'll never charge the British government with being corrupt, or the American government with being corrupt, or the French government with being corrupt. And there is nowhere on the African continent that corruption exists whereby America is not at the heart of it, or Britain is not at the heart of it, or France is not at the heart of it. In fact, when you trace the money, oftentimes the money traces back to Europe. Yeah, Switzerland is a big indicator. So I have to make that point, and I'm saying, brothers and sisters, for the sake of Pan-African party political broadcast purposes. All right, let's go forward. So we don't avoid that. All right, I'm very interested in this one, Gbontwi Anyetei. One district, one factory. Yeah. What is this? What is this? 1D, 1F. What is this?
One district, one factory is actually one of the campaign slogans that Akufo-Addo voted for.
Right.
I always said that the Beyond Aid call or cry wasn't backed up with anything.
Right.
But if he was a serious statesman,
yes,
the one district factory would have been it. But I think he was always at pains to keep the two promises separate.
What was the promise as far as one district, one factory? It might speak for itself.
It was literally a campaign promise to say that every district would have a factory.
Right.
So that means jobs for everybody. That means value addition to the commodities in your area. That means subsidies for those who are trying to set up. That means skills transfer for those who are going to work in there. That means getting equipment in, all sorts of things around what you hear, what you picture when you think of a factory. And not only just a factory, but that every district would get its own factory.
Right.
Of course, the lie is right in there because there is no official district territories. If you said region, we have region, and all of this. But well, we looked at this, no district. You know, places called districts and district commanders and things, but yeah, it's not something that people go by. So it's vague enough that anything would do. And yeah, at this point, we've established a pattern for those who didn't already sort of know, you know, this government is. This went exactly as you'd think it would go. It was very badly run. Some, a lot of the factories were not Ghanaian owned. A lot of the factories were just assembly plants, and they were crediting it. They were crediting another factory.
So, and then, can I just clarify something? So, because this is a government program, but the factories weren't Ghanaian owned, so that means they weren't owned by the government. Who were they owned by then?
The procedure was you as a private individual, you know, company owner, you would apply for one district, one factory certification that would come with all these perks and supports.
Okay, so the government wasn't going to build the factories; they were just going to give you perks if you build the factory.
Yeah. If you apply, you would get accreditation. You would be subsidized and have all kinds of support.
This is about creating a friendly environment for foreign investment. So they're gonna for
foreign and local, but to my thinking, on an observational thing, people definitely thought it was going to be for Ghanaian benefits. Generally, as far as on the owner front, certainly on the employee level, but on the owner front, definitely. On the owners too, that it was supposed to be.
It stands to reason, whether they're indigenously Ghanaian or not, that the only people that will be able to take advantage of this are people that already have means, already have capital. Really. So the extent to which this might benefit the masses or the ordinary people is going to be limited or dependent upon, you know. Say that again?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, exactly. I mean, if this was, once again, if this is well run, if this was Cuba, it would come with subsidies. It would come with subsidies to say, okay, whatever kind of credits, background.
Let's not even go into Cuba. If this was America, if this was Britain, it would come with subsidies, right? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, these people subsidized the industry. So yeah, go ahead.
Exactly. There'd be background checks. Okay, we're going to help you with this, and then repay, or even repayment, like the subsidies of taking care of it at a supplier level, that kind of thing. So there's repayment. The supplier has already basically been paid; they've been covered. But yeah, there was nothing like that. So exactly like you're saying, it was only open to people with means, and there's not many Ghanaians people with means. So some people got the One District One Factory certification and couldn't do anything about it. Some people weren't able to get it at all. And then if you take at any given time any 10 factories that officially have it, a load will be not Ghanaian owned. A couple won't even have Ghanaian employees in there. One or two will be just assembly. It will just be assembly, as in it's already been built, manufactured. That's as in it's already been through the factory in Asia or whatever, and then you are just putting it together and screwing a couple of things. You are literally just assembling.
I was
or anything.
Yeah, I was going to ask. That was going to be my next question in terms of the extent to which this was being taken advantage of by Chinese industry.
There is that. There's definitely factories that have been exposed to, like, not even. They've got the One District One Factory, so the advantages that come with that, but then they don't have, they don't have any sort of Ghanaian staff past maybe a cleaner or something like that. It's like all the skilled work is being managed by those from the country from whence they came.
All right, we're gonna move quickly. This is a very interesting one, yeah. We're gonna move quickly. So where are we placing this one, Chi? Black skin, white mask, treasonable offense, corruption at its finest, just plain lazy, or
for me that's got to be lazy.
Laziness.
The whole, I mean, laziness in of itself is a construct of capitalism, and this is the laziness being shown at its finest.
100%. All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to move swiftly on. Do you agree that Gbontwi's breakdown of the One District, One Factory program should land in the just plain lazy category? If not, let us know what category you believe it falls in. Okay, let's go forward. Another interesting one that you mentioned in relation to the last one, but it's gonna be on aid. Now, Gbontwi, like this one sounds good, yeah. This one sounds positive, right? You know what I'm saying? Beyond aid, Ghana, beyond aid. What you miserable Pan-Africanists? What are you gonna find to complain about Ghana being beyond aid now, Gbontwi? What's going on?
Actually, Akufo-Addo made it easy for us by the simple fact that after uttering this, 5 years later, he went for IMF. He went to take IMF. So that one, you don't need to say much. It's done. He went to IMF, so you don't even need to say much. Before he went to IMF, my complaints with that were the same as the One District, One Factory. Very little conversation was given to what it would take to get beyond aid. That was a learning, or I should say teaching, both a teaching opportunity. What does it take to get beyond aid? People got very excited by it, which excited me, because I very often think that people think aid actually is helping us. So when we said this and people got excited by it, I was really heartened that, okay, people, my fellow Africans are aware that this aid is harming us more than it's helping us. So it's known, and that's, for me, was my takeaway from the whole thing, that people do know that aid is more in benefit of those giving it than it is for us.
Okay.
This was given empty platitudes. A lot of people got excited. A lot of people that should have known better.
Yes.
I try not to judge them too much because I remember I got excited by the likes of Yahya Jammeh. I remember Yahya Jammeh's speech to the UN around
Yes. Yes.
2009, 2010.
Yes.
A
Yes.
lot of what Mugabe had to say.
Yes.
A lot of what Museveni has to say before I actually met Ugandans.
Yes.
So because of those people, those examples, I've learned to, okay, first of all, look for a plan within the words. And then, wait and be patient and sort of speak to people from, from those countries and things to sort of find out kind of like what the lived reality are.
I've only got one question on this one, Gbontwi. Was there even an attempt to explore with the people, the nation of Ghana, what it would take to go beyond aid? What was there even an attempt?
I would say no. Like I said before, the one district, one factory is part of getting us there. But the conversations were never bound. They were never connected to say this is actually what it would take to get beyond aid. It was empty platitudes. It was the hard work. It was standing on 2 feet. All this kind of like, what does it mean? So there was nothing around understanding.
Neoliberal platitudes. You know what I'm saying?
There was nothing to do with we are going to steadily reduce imports. We are going to steadily add value, like a 10-point plan. That's what it looks like. We're going to add value to all our commodities. We're going to strengthen the city. Like there's all sorts of things that this is not even what we the Pan-Africanists talk about. His own neoliberal people would list certain things. And then of course you would need the Pan-Africanist angle, the ideology. That gets you there because yes, if you are going to be pragmatic and you're going to be within capitalism and always going the cheapest routes, you're never going to get beyond aid because the cheapest route is going to be foreign interests who are going to they'll be cheap up front, but the real cost comes behind, or they're going to hamstring you. So so that one can go straight into our stratification table. Straight in.
All right, let's go. Where we placing this one, Gbontwi Anyetei? We've got
this one has got to be treason because it's got to be treason because you are taking a conversation that is being had in serious places around how to get beyond aid, and you have weaponized it now. When we talk about getting beyond aid, people are going to think that we're talking in empty terms like you.
Right.
So for me, that's treason. You're setting the whole conversation back.
Right. Interesting. Okay. All right. Well, just as an interesting point, the treasonable offenses are leading the pack at the moment, brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? We've got 3 treasonable offenses so far. So, that's an interesting point to point out in terms of neocolonialism. And on that point, in terms of things that you will need to do to get beyond development, I might submit, especially for a nation like Ghana, mandatory reading in secondary school should be neocolonialism, the last stage of imperialism. Essential to get beyond aid, brothers and sisters. You know what I'm saying? Essential. Mandatory reading. All right. The sacking of Domolevo. What's going on, Gbontwi? Who is Domolevo, and why was he sacked?
Domolevo. I'm trying to remember his specific job role. His role is similar to the
Auditor General. Auditor General.
Auditor General. That was his official role. Auditor General. And yes, he in the first year of Akufo-Addo was broken no nonsense. He was pointing out the wastage. He was pointing out all kinds of sort of ideas and enterprises that were being considered that were either open to corruption or not transparent and stuff like that. So he was a big favorite of a lot of Ghanaians about how no nonsense he was and how direct he was. And of course, Akufo-Addo had to get rid of him. Because the man was getting in the way of the corruption of his party.
So hold on. This was a member of the MPP who decided to lick out again.
No, the Auditor General is a bureaucrat.
He's independent. Right, he's independent.
He's not independent. I don't know which party he is, but he wouldn't be he's not a party member. Yeah, right. He would be a technocrat, bureaucrat.
Oh, yeah, he's a legislator. Yeah. I get it. So I'm like, Auditor General. I just got the vibes. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So this guy is trying to do the honest thing and tearing through the corruption, and he gets sacked by the government. Yeah. Now, and I do love that, there's many Africans around the world, who actually say government as government, that, you know what I'm saying? But as Pan-Africanism, brothers and sisters. So so he gets sacked. Now, how is that, because is the Auditor General appointed by the president?
Officially,
I'll tell you for why I'm asking the question. It would seem to be, like if we're talking about how Westminster democracy goes, there's supposed to be separation of powers, right? So the president shouldn't be able to sack the Auditor General. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there should be some constitutional rules.
There's definitely supposed to be division of that kind, but there isn't. Ghana is in a state of deep state capture.
Right.
And there's nepotism everywhere you look within the system, with relatives of the president inhabiting high office. Something like 600 staffers in the seat of government, Jubilee House, way more than necessary and all of this. So this is an example of that. What is interesting about this is how he was sacked. I guess the official term would be he was structurally dismissed. He had 169 days of leave pending that he hadn't taken, apparently. And so, once again, cowardice, rather than to straight up say, find some sort of other excuse, which they couldn't find. Akufo-Addo used the excuse of, you have to take your leave.
Yeah.
And then I think on the back end, it was something to do with his age. Which was really funny because Akufo-Addo was older than him. So me being older than you, I can still be the president. But you being younger than me, you can no longer be the Auditor General. And so this is one of those stories. And I think this story is always in danger of sort of going under the radar. That's sort of the story, but I wanted to really bring that one back. He was really, people really liked it when he was on the news and how he broke down these things.
Well, the article that you did share as a part of our notes does say that the Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional for him to be sacked.
Yeah. So that's part of the state capture. A lot of the placing of people that Akufo-Addo and Muhammad both do, as far as the EC, is all unconstitutional. And the constitution is actually for me a criminal document, outright criminal document that was written in the 90s.
Yeah.
And not only is it a criminal document, but these guys actually somehow make it even more criminal by ignoring parts of it for their own end, which is really difficult to do because it's already there just so much of what they do.
One of the things that I look forward to, as a part of the process of kind of like revolutionary activism, is this idea of constitutional change and development. I look forward to the day when we take a good look at these bloody constitutions and rewrite them. You know what I'm saying? The process of doing that, the national process, is going to be a beautiful one if it's engaged properly. All right, but where are we placing
that's corruption? Definitely, that's corruption.
Corruption at its finest. Corruption. Okay. So the man who tried to come in and at least be honest was given an offer he can't refuse. You know what I'm saying? A lot of these things. All right, we're gonna move quickly on. What's next on the list? The year of return. Now, Gbontwi, listen. Sorry, before we go forward, yeah, I just got to bring up one of the comments in the chat. Hold on a second. Kushti says at gotkushTV, I see now you're breaking hearts again, giving me PTSD. You get me? Yeah. Of uprising discussion and all these things. So now, Gbontwi Anyetei, you're gonna break hearts again, you know, because you're putting the year of return, Gbontwi. The good year of return, and on the chopping block, my G. What's going on?
I know this one's gonna make me unpopular, I know, but yeah, this one has to go. It has to go on there. There's so many things, not only so many things the year of return could have been, and the beyond the return that has followed. It hasn't been, but actually, the worst part about it was that the original plan was what it was supposed to, what it should have been, and instead it was watered down into just dirty December. That's where we are now with the year of return, beyond the return. It has literally been, it's synonymous with dirty December. And when I say that, that's not to criticize either institution. I enjoy a party like anyone else. You know, which makes me sound very old, I know. But
I can personally vouch for that. You know what I'm saying?
I like a party just like anyone else, but something that became so known and spoken of worldwide should have really had more impacts than it did. Many people compare the influx of diaspora to the influx around Nkrumah, the Nkrumah return, but the difference was Nkrumah had a plan for those that were returning. Maya Angelou in the 60s worked in University of Ghana. I think when Malcolm X came to visit in '64, she was still working there. And Malcolm X is an example. When he came, he met with Nkrumah, went to University of Ghana, spoke there. Lots of examples of this. Muhammad Ali came.
John Henry Clark.
Exactly. John Henry Clark actually worked on a newspaper in Ghana. For a source on that, you guys should, if you haven't watched it already, I'm sure you have. A Great and Mighty Walk. John Clark talks about that. I think that documentary was the first time I even knew about that. I think he'd of course mentioned going to Ghana in his lectures, but I don't think he mentioned the fact he wrote at what was then the Ghana Evening News. And all of that. So this is it. These are functional roles that people were having. So, you know, they were really feeding into the ecosystem. We're really getting to understand the diaspora narrative in a functional way, in a way that we're all learning from each other. Unfortunately, it's a party thing. People can party and champagne and dance and, of course, sex and all of that. But where's the learning? Where's the understanding? Where's the connection, understanding, plugging each other's gaps? We on the continent understand white supremacy, or I could say we feel white supremacy differently to those in the diaspora and how they feel it there. So that conversation, connecting it, learning, conjoining our movements, as well as the partying, as well as, not saying instead of, as well as, because the partying is where a lot of bonding takes place.
Yeah, it's important. It's important. Very important.
Unfortunately, it just became just about parties. And I think what we're seeing, and we've been seeing for the last at least a year, is, you know, some of the diasporans who have stayed and tried to establish business interests and get into the property thing, there's some blowback and sort of feeling, and people are throwing around the word gentrification, which I very much disagree with. I know about the mechanics that go into gentrification, and none of those things, no, I'm not saying none, very few of those things exist within African Americans returning and buying a house with dollars because they've got dollars. You know what I mean? But that leaves us open because of the vacuum that has been allowed. Even things like the revenue that it's worth. People say things like this put Ghana on the map, and it definitely has. Social media is big. So the fact that Ghana is very loud at December cannot be denied. But nobody's going to tell me that this is the first time that celebrities have come to Ghana. We've already discussed a few examples. We haven't even gone into sort of the 1800s. You know, you've got Brazilian Africans repatriated from Brazil who came to join us in Accra, all the way back in the 1830s. And when you read about them, they were. You could imagine that they were the celebrities of their time. They popularized boxing. They knew how to tailor, so they got into tailoring. So you can imagine they were like the stars. They tried, so they were the diaspora return of their time, but they came. There was a merger between the Tabon. No, so much so have they merged into the Accra fabric that you can meet somebody who has a name that says that they are from there, and they don't know that they're descended from Brazilians. You ask, oh, your name is Luterot. Oh, your name is that is a certain name, that boxer Nelson. Names like that. And they'll be like, it's you that has to tell them that. Oh, that means that your people came with the Brazilians and all this kind of thing. So that's how. Which is an issue, an issue in itself. It showed that that's how the bond was, you know what I mean? That you just got to deal with that acceptance took place that is very much sort of missing from the present sort of diaspora movement.
All right.
I always think about how Scotland, were able to put like a dollar amount on how much money they made from Braveheart. After Braveheart, the amount of tourists that started coming to Scotland.
Okay.
They can tell you by the number how much tourism improved. Same with Northern Ireland, and where they filmed Game of Thrones. Same with I think Israel with Passion of the Christ. Like they've got the numbers that they can justify that this is what happened. We don't have any of those numbers when it comes to Europe. So how good is it really? So that's
all right, interesting. One thing I'm pleased about, is that I experienced Ghana in December before it was Dirty December. Just about, I left just before the party was ramping up. I'm saying and I don't regret it, but I had to come back to London because I had run-ins over here. But I would have loved to have stayed New Year. And every now and then I think of that one sister bunch that we did see in that club one time, but you know what I mean?
Don't tell the wife. I hope the wife is not watching. I don't want trouble with it.
Another subject for another time, you know what I'm saying? Another subject for another time, you know what I mean? Where we putting this Gbontwi in the run-ins? Where we putting this in the run-ins?
I'm putting that at lazy, definitely.
Laziness. All right, so lazy's catching up now. It's caught up with treason. So a lot of treason and laziness going on. You know what I'm saying? The place, kings and queens. All right, we're going to move quickly. We've got a couple more left. Then we're going to wrap up the thing. So where are we now? We're going to... Right, this is an interesting one, Gbontwi. This is an interesting one, COVID relocation. And we've got some flags here, the EU flag and the Cuban flag. So what's up with all of this?
This is an interesting one, definitely. COVID, there's not much I need to say about that. Like, once again, literally everybody on this call, sorry, in our audience can definitely, speak to, the COVID schism and how sort of everything changed. And so what I'll say about it in Ghana was, for me, and I know this is something I'm going to disturb my children about plenty in the future, is the missed opportunity that was COVID. COVID was an opportunity, people were saying it at the time, for all of us to reset. But unfortunately, the government just wanted it to remain as is. When I think about, how Europe came to a standstill, and Africa, most of Africa, apart from Tanzania, decided to follow suit. Keeping in mind that most of, if I can say all of Black Africa wasn't affected by COVID the same way as Europe and the rest of the world. our numbers were way down. I think to this day, I don't think 2,000 people died of COVID. And that's keeping in mind the fact that some people say that numbers were assigned to COVID as COVID that weren't. And then some were saying that some were not assigned as COVID that were. So for me, it balanced out. That 2,000 was about right. My own maternal grandmother died during COVID as well. And so even within the family, there's some disagreement about whether it was COVID or not. I couldn't begin to really guess. My grandmother was sick for as long as I knew her.
Yes.
So she's definitely one of those pre-existing condition people that they were talking about. And so, yeah, who knows of these things? But like I said, it wasn't many. There was an opportunity for a reset from anything, whether it was to do with the amount of planes that were down because nobody was traveling. We could have hired those planes and done some intra-Africa transportation of things. There's a lot that could have taken place. Why we have the Cuba flag here is that Cuba showed the way. Cuba, after years of sanctions, the most punitive sanctions possible. And these are not just sanctions in name, but they are physical ships always stationed within a set perimeter of Cuba, preventing any kind of trade and exports and imports to Cuba. So they were actively suppressed. And we saw people from this same Cuba, doctors, crews of doctors going around the world delivering medical assistance. So this is an island state. You could argue more persecuted certainly than Ghana, because Ghana agrees to all American demands. And we learned nothing from them. We have a laboratory in Ghana who made some noise about wanting to develop our own immunization, our own treatments. And there was no interest placed. We just wanted to wait around for European intervention, invariably because in European interventions come with a payday. One of those European interventions was Germany giving us old AstraZeneca shots. So it had expired, so they weren't going to put it into German citizens' arms. And they offered to send them to us, and we willingly took it. And so there's that, and I think the corruption stuff around COVID has been international. There was also the same thing around COVID jabs that were billed for that never arrived, that are occasionally still asked about. So there was all of that. And then just like that, COVID now kind of like over to some degree, and then we're going to IMF. The same European and American institutions that had ground to a halt, people thought, is this the fall of the West? A country that wasn't impacted by COVID hardly at all is waiting all this while to then, as usual, go back for money from those same people.
You know what's interesting about what you just said here? During the COVID times, and I was in Ghana during lockdown as well for a bit in 2021. And one of the things that was interesting to me is that one time the Nana Akufo-Addo made a speech, right? And he said something like, 400 people, there's been a sharp rise in deaths from COVID. And he said something like 400 people or something like that have died in like, no, was it 400 or 4? I can't remember. It was some small number have died over a particular period of time. And I remember thinking about more like, over the last month. And I'm saying, but more people than that are dying in the UK in a week. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was, so coming like experiencing that lockdown COVID in America, in the UK and in Ghana was a very interesting one, But another thing that I experienced was the fact that, or that was a story, was the fact that the US and the UK, the Western world, wouldn't accept expertise or medical assistance from Cuba.
Yeah.
Like they refuse to do it, and this is despite the fact that you know, as you said, Cuba's medical facilities are well renowned, their doctors are well renowned, and their services are well renowned. And they were investigating the virus just like everybody else. But how effective their research is, the Western world would not accept it, would not introduce it into their expertise formally, because it was Cuba. Yes. And then at the same time, you had Pfizer, which is one of the major corporations that were responsible for producing the vaccine. They were going around the world making the vaccine available, but they were trying to do it by adding strings. Yeah, and one of the set of strings that they were trying to attach to some of it was access to what they call the sovereign assets of the countries. Yeah, that they were offering the vaccine to, and sovereign assets are things like banks and military bases. Yeah, so that they were accepting that access as payment, right? Yeah. For them providing the vaccine. Yeah, so there's all kinds of politics involved in the medical industry, brothers and sisters. Yeah, that we have to pay attention to. You know what I'm saying? I'm not gonna dwell on this too long, because I know we've got to wrap up soon. So let's where are we placing this one, Chi?
Where are we putting that? What do you think?
Boy,
I mean, because it has elements of corruption.
Yeah,
it has certainly elements of treason,
of laziness.
Yeah, it definitely has elements of laziness.
So,
I mean, where you are thinking about, once again, the destinies of and health of the country, I think you've got to go treason with that. It's a treasonable event. The opportunities that where the relocation element of that comes, we can move to the next slide, but let me just finish up to say that with the relocation, that pertains to one of the other lost opportunities that I was speaking about with that. With the lockdown, which we didn't need, it was interesting really seeing this sort of mass evacuation from Accra, which we already knew. We know that a lot of the people in Accra, at the majority at this point, are not from Accra. They've got their hometown that they go to. It was really interesting seeing the migration happen, because then it shows that, you know, people, you know, they've got homes to go to. And what the opportunity there is that if you can create industry in those places, so that your one district, one factory that you promised, if you can actually create one district, one factory and create employment for these people, then you have a situation where this globalization doesn't take place. Because most of the people going back are not earning a lot of money here in Accra. You know what I mean? So it's that missed opportunity that, you know, you really saw the visual aid of the populations being packed with people going back to their towns to, you know, to see out the COVID lockdown there at the time. And it was just a real tragedy about the things that could happen. But it also shows the way forward there, you know what I mean, as well.
Yes. Yeah. All right. The Get Fund scandal, Gbontwi, second to last Get Fund scandal. What's going on here?
Get Fund scandal is an interesting one. I'd never heard of this project until the scandal. But apparently what they do is I'm not sure how they secure these. They get all kinds of really sought after scholarships and opportunities to learn at some of the most elite schools and universities around the world. And probably through some bilateral UN EU thing with a country like Ghana, the scholarships are issued to sort of the government, for the government to dispense as they see fit. So once again, a functioning country would organize some prizes, would organize, who knows, maybe like lottery systems to get, you know, their citizens, students for the most part, taking up these various scholarships and learning opportunities.
Right.
What it turned out to be was that, and once again, this is both parties. The list, when it dropped, had names of politicians from both parties who had taken up the scholarships themselves. which is deeply, deeply criminal because
Deeply.
the definition of education in Ghana is letters after your name. And for better and mostly for worse, the politicians in our country have already enough letters after their name. Some of them will be talking about Oxford, some of them will be talking about Harvard, MBAs, up and down, will be talking about it. So for them to officially have taken up these scholarships themselves is criminal. Once again, the rationale behind this is vague. Depending on who you talk to, some will say that they never actually attended the class. It was for them an opportunity just to collect the per diem, the money that comes as being a student.
Wow.
Which were large amounts of money, but once again, for politicians and things, you wouldn't think it was much. You're talking about 20,000 here, 15,000. But then, you know, greed is greed is greed. Is the sort of thinking around that.
Criminal. Especially when you think about the fact that, you know, it costs to get educated in a nation like Ghana. And politicians this is levels of criminality.
Yeah. It really is, because you are actively disenfranchising the gifted youth in your nation, and you're either taking up yourself, which, like I said, I doubt they did. And then some would also say that they were selling it, because, like I said, a lot of these are sought after. These are scholarships sometimes that certain nationalities can't access because of ongoing politics between their country and America. So they would pay big money to secure that, and things like that. So there was that. And once again, so there's the criminality, and keep in mind that it was politicians from both sides. So when it broke early on in the MPP regime, it was enough that there was still some from the previous government that had also been doing the same thing.
Wow.
So for me, this goes straight into black skin, white masks. Like it can't go anywhere else.
Right.
The students that could take this up, and just because of the sake of coins, or if we did take it up, and maybe a few of these politicians did take it up, it was really criminal for them to further empower themselves and get more letters after their name that they don't need, because after all, they've entered politics and they're about to get rich robbing the same people who they are further marginalizing by stealing their scholarships. It's criminal. Black skin,
All right. Last but by no means least, let us address the final case study, which is Black Lives Matter. This is an interesting one. Why is this here?
It's definitely an interesting one. I think this one is basically around the George Floyd situation, especially that took place once again in the COVID year, 2020. That was a really interesting year. So there's no way I have to explain what happened with George Floyd, but around the world, rightly so, there were shows of solidarity and sympathy, and that conversation around, you know, the condition of blackness in America was definitely had. And so in concordance with that, in Ghana, this was led by one of my organizations, Economic Fighters League. We held a vigil, not only for George Floyd, but also for two other notable figures of Ghanaians. One was somebody that was shot by police during the COVID lockdown. Can you imagine? Here's this COVID lockdown that we already discussed, wasn't necessary, wasn't needed, and then in pursuance of enforcing this lockdown that wasn't needed, they actually shot somebody dead. Which is criminal. So that citizen, and then also I call her an auntie, who was accused of being a witch, and she was killed by
I remember. Yeah, I remember that.
So the vigil was commemorating these three deaths. And definitely, you know, to have that conversation about what we mean by Black Lives Matter, because of course, being on the continent in Ghana, especially, maybe more so than others, maybe less so than others, I'm not too sure. this conversation around the black thing is very often dismissed. Oh, well, we're all black. The Black Lives Matter thing doesn't scan here.
Right.
And there's definitely no way that you could argue that the Black Lives Matter conversation, whatever you feel about where it's gone since, applies to us in the same way as it does to the diaspora in Europe, in America. We are the majority. Our police are us. Our army are us.
Yeah.
What Black Lives Mattering looks like here is, do the lives of Africans matter? What shows that the lives of the African population matter? What shows that in the way the country is run? And very little does. I think this conversation has shown that to everybody, that very little proof shows that Black lives do indeed. And so here's this visual takes place. Permission, not even permission, you don't have to, legally, you do not have to seek permission to demonstrate in Ghana. You just have to make an announcement. You have to let the police know by official record that you're going to gather publicly. But because it was run by Economic Fighters League, and they know that by all means it wouldn't just be another sort of hollow, it would be quite cruel to say hollow, but it wouldn't be a one-dimensional show of solidarity for George Floyd. It would be about a whole conversation and the condition of African lives here in Ghana. The police suppressed that demonstration. They kidnapped. I would call it kidnap. They kidnapped and arrested my friend and CIC, Ernesto Bora, Commander-in-Chief of Economic Fighters League, and kept him under arrest. I'm trying to remember how many days it was. I think it was for the best part of a week.
Wow.
And then kept him in court for the most fugacious process you could imagine, using all kinds of excuses. This kind of system that they use of exhaustion, trying to exhaust you into agreeing to whatever it is that they're trying to oppress you into. Not coming to court. You call ahead, is court coming on, the clerk of the court will tell you that they can't tell, they don't know if the judge is coming. You can't. You want to make sure they're only talking to the person who's actually on trial, and then they'll say, sorry, the judge is not coming today. It's been adjourned to another day, or the judge will come and they'll adjourn it to another day. Because keeping in mind that everything was done as it should have been, you have the right to assemble. All you have to do is, make it a public record that's going to take place, which we did. And so this was suppressed. And what was made more offensive, even beyond the fact that sort of police shot at us and all sorts of things, is that the president himself attended a sort of George Floyd solidarity program elsewhere in Accra, somewhere in the wake of all of this. It's just, once again, like all of these things on their own, they are a microcosm of all the things that Ghana is, all the things that is wrong with Ghana, all the things that we need to reverse, that we can reverse to get Ghana to where, Ghana needs to get to. And so this is, that's definitely one that goes into our stratification. And this is because very often we are really unclear as to, how aware our political figures are about how broken things are. But when you don't let a demonstration like this take place, which is not about a specific thing that government has done wrong. So this actually should be a holiday for you. This should be a holiday for you to say that, okay, this is not about energy something, it's not about, but they realize that no, it's good. So it's similar to the cathedral, it's similar to the convention event that was broken down. It wasn't a specific criticism on anything the government had done at that time. It was to do with the general state of brokenness around the world and the condition that Africans are in. But of course, it was going to be a platform for it was going to be a political for conscientization. So they had to support that.
So where are we putting this one?
So I'm putting that definitely black skin, white masks.
All right.
If you are preventing what is going to be an ideal opportunity for Africans to educate each other, for Africans to understand what our levels of self-worth should be, although they are not, that is you actively lending yourself to maintaining, the European agenda.
All right, family. So we've gone through, a list of case studies in terms of the geopolitical and social environment in Ghana, and we've put them into stratifications. Oh, hold on there. I got to rejig my situation over here. Make it. All right. Okay. Good. Hold on. Let's make sure that everything's in order. Okay. And so in the black skin, white mask category, we have the Achimota rezoning, we have the Get Fund scandal, and we have Black Lives Matter protest. The government response to Black Lives Matter protests. In treasonable offenses, we have power distribution services and the fact that this private corporation failed in its attempt to take over the main electricity energy supply in the nation. We have the scandal of Cecilia Dapa, thief in the holy money. We have what's it called? Ghana Beyond Aid, and we have COVID, COVID relocation. Then now, within the context of corruption at its finest, we have the National Cathedral of Ghana that is yet to be built beyond its foundation, and we also have the sacking of Domolevo, the Auditor General, who was trying to weed out corruption, it would seem, and as a result was attacked and effectively sacked by the president. Sorry, excuse me. In Just Plain Lazy, we have the government failing to enact its own cannabis laws. We have the government failing to enact its own one district, one factory program. And we also have the government failing to properly enact anything of value when it comes to the year of return and beyond the return. And finally, in the distraction category, we have the LGBTQ law. This has been a fun episode, Gbontwi. I've enjoyed it. And I hope that brothers and sisters have gotten a deeper understanding of some of the, the specific issues. Yeah, as Gbontwi said, he wanted to break it down a little bit more and get into the micro policies. So give us some black fists in the chat if you've learned something from today's show. And do you have any closing words or any issue that we need to deal with as we wrap up our episode today, Gbontwi?
Just to say that once again, I said at the top that these classifications are by no means official of any kind. I consider myself an Nkrumah's Garveyite, and I wouldn't say that this classification falls within their body. And yes, I know that some would say that all of this is black skin, white mask, all of these are treason, all of these are corruption. But I really wanted with this exercise to sort of get up all looking at these things and breaking these things down, and then sort of seeing the levels of enemies that we've got. If we lump all enemy action into one thing, you weaken your ability to fight. In any war, there's a reason why you've got cavalry, you've got Air Force, you've got bombardiers, you've got different divisions because you've got different kinds of enemies and how to attack them, how to fight them. It's the same thing we have to understand these political enemies that we're dealing with. They are not operating in one way, and there are different ways to fight them, and they are also dealing with different motivations on sort of any given day. So agree or disagree, I kind of hope you disagree and look forward to your disagreements in the comments and so forth. But it's just kind of like
my thinking around the exercise.
All right, thank you very much, Gbontwi Anyetei, for a very, very creative way for providing a lens to look at the political situation in Ghana. We will be back on the 23rd of April. So we're every 4th Tuesday of the month. So we are back on the 23rd of April for our next episode. Do stay tuned for more information. And with that, brothers and sisters, I say Abibi Fahodie, African Power. Sorry, Abibi Tumi. Abibi Fahodie, African Power and African Liberation for all African people. We'll see you again next month for another episode of Ghana, Democracy Under Fire.
I can't think about this democracy. 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 Democracy, demonstration of praise, praise, demonstration.